Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Delivery. Jeremy Best had built his life on certainty. As a forensic accountant for the past 15 years, he'd made a career out of finding patterns in chaos, uncovering truths buried in spreadsheets and bank statements. Numbers didn't lie. People did. He learned that lesson the hard way. The autumn air bit cold as Jeremy pulled into the post office parking lot on Morrison Street. The building was one of those aging brick structures that seemed frozen in 1975, with fluorescent lights that hummed and flickered. He'd received a notification about a package, probably the vintage camera equipment he'd ordered online, something to fill the empty hours that plagued his evenings. 7 years. 7 years since they'd buried an empty casket with Travis's name on it. His son, his only child, dead at 19 in what they called an accidental drowning during a solo camping trip in the Cascades. They never found the body. The river had been too violent that season, the currents too strong. Christy, his wife, had insisted on the memorial service anyway. "We need closure," she'd said, tears streaming down her face. Jeremy had never gotten closure. The grief was a living thing that occupied the space where his son used to be. Inside, the post office smelled of cardboard and floor cleaner. The clerk, a thin man in his 60s with a name tag, Ronald Cummins, looked up from his computer screen. "Jeremy Best?" Ronald asked, already reaching beneath the counter. "That's me." Ronald placed a medium-sized box on the counter, then hesitated. His weathered hand hovered over a second package, smaller, wrapped in brown paper. The old man's expression shifted, something between discomfort and pity. "There's another one," Ronald said slowly. "Your son came in about 3 months ago. Paid for priority holding. Said to give it to you specifically today, November 15th. Insisted on the date." The world tilted. Jeremy gripped the counter's edge. "My son, Travis Best. That's what the form says." Young man, mid-20s, had your eyes. Seemed real particular about everything. Ronald slid the package across the counter. "I'm sorry if this is... I didn't mean to." Jeremy's hands shook as he took the package. It was light, couldn't have weighed more than a pound. His name was written in handwriting he recognized immediately. Travis's distinctive scrawl, the way he looped his Y's and crossed his T's. "Did he say anything else?" Ronald shifted uncomfortably. "Just that you'd understand when the time came." He seemed angry, maybe, determined. "Look, if this is some kind of prank." "It's not." Jeremy's voice came out strangled. He grabbed both packages and walked out on legs that barely held him. In his car, Jeremy sat in silence for 5 minutes before he could bring himself to open the brown paper. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note on line paper. "Dad, I'm alive. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner. Ask Mom why she lied about my death. Ask her about Carlos Rhodes. Ask her about the life insurance policy she took out 6 months before I died. Ask her where the $750,000 went. I've been watching, documenting everything. The USB has proof. I need you to be strong for what comes next. Meet me at Mercer's Diner on Highway 9, November 22nd, 8 p.m. Come alone. Tell her nothing. She can't know I'm alive yet. Not until we're ready. I love you, Dad. I never stopped. Travis." Jeremy read the note 3 times. Each word was a detonation in his carefully reconstructed life. Christy had lied. His wife of 22 years had looked into his eyes as he wept over their son's death and lied. The grief that had nearly destroyed him, the nights he'd stood in Travis's empty room unable to breathe, the years of counseling and medication, and slowly learning to exist in a world without his boy, all of it built on deception. And who the hell was Carlos Rhodes? Jeremy's phone buzzed. A text from Christy. "Don't forget, dinner at the Williamsons tonight. 7 p.m. With a blue shirt." Abby and Sean Williamson were Christy's oldest friends from college. Jeremy had always found them superficial. Abby with her plastic surgery and designer handbags. Sean with his leveraged real estate empire and wandering eye. But Christy adored them, spent hours at their house in the gated community on the north side. Jeremy typed back, "I'll be there." He drove home on autopilot, his mind racing through 7 years of memories, searching for cracks in Christy's performance. Had there been signs? Moments when a mask slipped? Their house was a craftsman style in a quiet neighborhood. The kind of place where people waved at each other while mowing lawns and complained about property taxes at HOA meetings. Jeremy had bought it when Travis was 5, imagining it filled with birthday parties and graduation celebrations. Now it felt like a mausoleum. Christie's Mercedes was already in the driveway. Through the window, he could see her in the kitchen, phone pressed her ear, laughing at something. She was 43 but could pass for 35. With honey blonde hair she had touched up religiously and a gym-toned figure she maintained with the dedication of a professional athlete. She'd always been beautiful. Jeremy had thought himself lucky. He slipped the USB drive into his pocket and left the packages in the trunk. He needed time to think, to plan. Travis had said to tell her nothing. Jeremy's entire career had been built on patience, on gathering evidence before making accusations. He could do this. He had to do this. Inside, Christy ended her call and kissed his cheek. Her perfume was the same as always, something French and expensive that Travis used to tease her about. "How was your day?" she asked, already moving back to the stove where something simmered. "Fine. Closed the Harrison audit." "That's wonderful." Her enthusiasm seemed genuine. "It always did. I knew you'd catch their discrepancies. You're brilliant at what you do." The irony wasn't lost on Jeremy. He caught discrepancies. He found lies buried in financial records. And his own wife had been lying to him for 7 years about the most important thing in his life. "How was yours?" he asked, watching her carefully. "Oh, yoga, then lunch with Marianne. She's thinking about leaving Gerald." Finally, Christy rolled her eyes. "I told her years ago he was cheating." Gerald Robinson, another figure in their social circle. Jeremy cataloged the names, wondering who else might be involved in whatever conspiracy had stolen his son. "We need to leave by 6:30 for the Williamsons," Christy continued. "Abby's been planning this dinner for weeks. Some couple she wants us to meet. He's in real estate development too." Jeremy nodded, excused himself, and went to his study. He locked the door and inserted the USB drive into his laptop with trembling hands. The drive contained folders, dozens of them. Financial records, photographs, surveillance footage, audio recordings. Jeremy opened a file labeled "Start Here." It was a video. Travis's face filled the screen, older than Jeremy remembered, with a thin beard and harder eyes. But it was unmistakably his son. "Dad," Travis said, and Jeremy's chest constricted. "If you're watching this, you got my package. I'm sorry for the shock, but there was no other way. Well, I'm about to show you. It's going to hurt. But you need to see everything before we can make this right." The video cut to a series of images. Bank statements showing transactions from an account in Christie's name. Large deposits. Transfers to offshore accounts. Purchase records for a condo in Portland under a different name, Christy Morgan, her maiden name. Plane tickets. Hotel receipts. Then photographs. Christy with a man Jeremy didn't recognize, tall, dark-haired, handsome in a slick way. They were kissing outside a restaurant, entering a hotel together. The metadata showed dates going back 9 years. 9 years. Before Travis's supposed death. "His name is Carlos Rhodes." Travis's voice continued over the images. "Mom met him at a real estate conference in Portland. He's a developer, specializes in luxury condos. They started an affair 8 months later. I found out when I was 17. Came home early from school and overheard a phone call. I didn't tell you because I was stupid, thought I could fix it, thought she'd end it. But it got worse. More documents appeared. A life insurance policy on Travis Best, $750,000, beneficiary, Christy Best, taken out 3 months before his death. Medical records showing Travis had been diagnosed with anxiety and depression. Records Jeremy had never seen, never signed for. "She planned it," Travis said, his voice thick with anger. "Mom and Carlos. They needed money for his business and her lifestyle. Divorcing you would mean splitting assets. But if I died, the insurance money, plus keeping you in the dark, keeping your income, your stability. She faked my death, Dad. Made me disappear." The video showed more, a death certificate, police reports, witness statements from that camping trip. All manufactured. Travis explained how Christy had drugged him on a supposed father-son trip she'd arranged at the last minute. Jeremy had been away at a conference. How she'd driven him to a remote location where Carlos was waiting. How they'd threatened him. Told him if he ever contacted Jeremy, they'd frame him for a crime that would land him in prison. I was terrified, Travis admitted. I was 19, and she was my mother, and she looked at me like I was just an obstacle. Carlos had documentation. Forged records of me stealing from your firm, dealing drugs. They had everything ready. So I ran. I've been living under a different name in Montana, working construction, try to figure out how to prove what they did without getting arrested or killed. The video cut back to Travis's face. I've spent 3 years gathering evidence. Everything you need is on this drive. But Dad, here's the thing. It's not just about the money anymore. I followed the trail. Carlos's business is a front. He launders money for real estate developers who cut corners, bribe inspectors, use substandard materials. 3 of his buildings have had major safety issues. 1 collapsed during construction. 2 workers died. Mom knows. She's been helping him move money, hide assets. They're both criminals. Jeremy sat back, his hands over his face. The woman he'd shared a bed with for 2 decades had systematically destroyed their family for money and a lover. She'd let him grieve, had held him while he cried, had gone to therapy sessions where she performed the role of grieving mother while living second life. I need your help to bring them down, Travis said. Both of them. Not just for what they did to us, but for those workers who died, for everyone they've hurt. Meet me next week. We'll plan everything. And Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't come to you sooner. I was scared and stupid, and I should have trusted you. I love you. The video ended. Jeremy sat in the darkness of his study, rage and grief warring in his chest. Christy's voice called from downstairs. Jeremy, we need to leave in 10 minutes. He wiped his eyes, straightened his tie, and made a decision. If Christy could perform for 7 years, he could perform for 1 week. He would go to this dinner, smile, and make small talk, and play the role of devoted husband. And while he did, he would plan, because Jeremy Best was very, very good at uncovering lies. And Christy was about to learn what happened when you lied to a man who made a living catching liars. Chapter 2, The Double Life. The Williamsons' house was everything Christy aspired to. 3 stories of modern architecture with floor-to-ceiling windows, situated on 2 acres with a view of the Sound. Inside, everything was white and chrome and expensive, the kind of sterile perfection that appeared in design magazines. Jeremy moved through the dinner party on autopilot. A glass of wine in his hand he didn't drink, nodding at conversations he didn't hear. He watched Christy work the room in a black cocktail dress, her laugh musical and practiced. She touched Sean Williamson's arm while telling a story, leaned in to whisper something to Abby that made her gasp and giggle. She was performing, just like she always performed. How had he never seen it? Jeremy, Abby approached with another couple in tow. I want you to meet Cassie and Jordan Schultz. Jordan's in commercial development. I thought you two might have war stories to share about dealing with contractors and budgets. Jordan Schultz was in his 50s, with silver hair and an expensive suit. He shook Jeremy's hand with the firm grip of a man who'd closed 1,000 deals. Cassie was younger, mid-30s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Forensic accounting, Jordan said. That must be fascinating work. Find a lot of embezzlers. More than you'd think, Jeremy replied, his voice steady despite the chaos in his head. People always think they're smarter than the paper trail. They never are. I've always said, Sean interjected, joining their circle, that in business, trust is everything. But verification is better. He laughed his own joke. Speaking of which, Christy mentioned you just closed a big audit. The Harrison case. Jeremy's attention sharpened. Christy had mentioned his work to Sean. She never discussed his cases. Always said they were boring, too technical. Just another fraud case, Jeremy said carefully. Nothing exciting. Still, Sean continued, must be satisfying to catch them. To know you're the one who unraveled their lies. His smile was affable, but something in his tone made Jeremy uneasy. Christy appeared at Jeremy's elbow, threading her arm through his. Darling, Abby wants to show me her new meditation room. Will you be all right here? Of course. He kissed her cheek, and she didn't flinch. Didn't show any sign of guilt. She was that good. As the women moved away, Jordan pulled out his phone. Actually, Jeremy, since you're in accounting, maybe you could glance at something for me. I'm considering a partnership on a development project, but some of the numbers seem off. Would you mind? It was just drinks and conversation, but Jeremy's instincts, honed from years of finding fraud, prickled. Before he could respond, his own phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. Dad, it's T. Don't trust anyone at that party. Rhodes has connections there. Be careful what you say. We'll explain everything next week. Jeremy's blood ran cold. Travis was watching, which meant Carlos Rhodes had someone at this dinner party. His eyes swept the room. Sean? Jordan? Someone else? Actually, Jeremy said to Jordan, I'd be happy to look at those numbers. Why don't you email them to me? I'll need my proper software to do a thorough analysis. Jordan nodded, seemed satisfied. They exchanged business cards. As Jeremy pocketed the card, he noticed Sean watching them from across the room, his expression unreadable. The dinner itself was an elaborate affair. Multiple courses, wine pairings, the kind of meal that cost more than some people's monthly rent. Jeremy sat between Cassie Schultz and Abby, with Christy across from him next to Sean. He forced himself to eat, to respond to questions, to seem normal. Jeremy's always been the stable one, Christy said at one point, her hand reaching across the table to touch his. After we lost Travis, I don't know what I would have done without him. He's my rock. The table made sympathetic noises. Abby squeezed Christy's other hand. You two have been through so much, but you came out stronger. Grief either breaks you or bonds you, Christy said, her eyes glistening with manufactured tears. We chose to let it bond us. Jeremy wanted to throw his wine in her face. Instead, he smiled and said, Christy's the strong one. She never gave up hope that someday, somehow, we'd find peace with what happened. Christy's expression flickered, just for a microsecond, before smoothing back into grateful perfection. Had he imagined it? Or had she caught the double meaning in his words? After dinner, the men retired to Sean's study for cigars and whiskey, while the women remained in the living room. The study was all dark wood and leather, with walls lined with books Jeremy suspected Sean had never read. So, Sean said, pouring amber liquid into crystal glasses, what do you really think is happening with the market? I've got 3 developments in the pipeline, but I'm wondering if I should hold off. Jordan and another man, Larry Hess, something in commercial real estate, launched into a discussion of interest rates and construction costs. Jeremy half listened, his mind on Travis's warning. Rhodes had the right idea, Larry was saying. Get in early on these luxury condos. Flip them before anyone looks too closely at the construction. Margins are incredible if you know how to manage the inspectors. Jeremy's attention snapped into focus. Carlos Rhodes? You know him? Sure, Larry said, surprised. We've worked together on a couple of projects. Smart guy. Aggressive, but that's what you need to be in this market. Why? Just heard the name somewhere, Jeremy said casually, thinking of diversifying some investments. I could introduce you, Sean offered. Carlos and I go way back. In fact, he's supposed to join us for golf next month. You should come. We'll make it a foursome. Jeremy hid his reaction behind his glass. Sean knew Carlos. How close were they? Close enough to be involved in Christie's affair? In Travis's fake death? That'd be great, Jeremy said. Always looking to expand my network. The conversation moved on, but Jeremy's mind raced. Travis had said Rhodes had connections at this party. Sean seemed the obvious answer. But what about the others? How deep did this conspiracy go? When they rejoined the women, Jeremy found Christy deep in conversation with Cassie Schultz. As he approached, Christy smoothly changed topics. So I told her the secret is consistency. You can't expect results if you only show up to yoga once a week. But Jeremy had heard the tail end of their previous conversation. Portland property is a good investment, but you need the right partner. Portland, where Christy had her secret condo, where Carlos Rhodes operated. The drive home was quiet. Christy hummed along to the radio, seemingly content. Jeremy kept his eyes on the road and his hands steady on the wheel. That was nice, Christy said. Cassie's interesting, She's looking to invest in some development projects. I might connect her with a few people I know. What people? Jeremy asked, keeping his tone mild. Oh, just some contacts from when I was doing real estate consulting before everything happened. Her voice caught slightly. I've been thinking about getting back into it, actually, just part-time. Something to keep me busy. Real estate consulting. Is that what she called helping her lover launder money? If that's what you want, Jeremy said. We could use the extra income. The market's been rough. Have we been having money problems? Christie's voice sharpened. You didn't mention. No, Jeremy assured her. Everything's fine. I just meant it never hurts to have more. Christie relaxed. Well, I'm not worried about money. We've always been comfortable. And with the life insurance from. She trailed off, dab at her eyes. Sorry. Still hard sometimes. The life insurance from their son's death. $750,000. She collected on a policy taken out 3 months before she faked that death. And she had the audacity to cry about it while sitting 2 feet away from him. Jeremy's hands tightened on the steering wheel. 7 more days. He could maintain this facade for 7 more days. At home, Christie went through her evening routine, removing makeup, applying creams, checking her phone. Jeremy watched from the bedroom doorway as she typed a message, smiling at the response. Everything okay? He asked. She jumped slightly, hadn't heard him. Oh, yes, just Marianne. She's made a decision about Gerald. She's leaving him. I'm so proud of her. Jeremy nodded, climbed into bed. Christie joined him moments later, curling into her side of the mattress they'd shared for 22 years. Once, he would have reached for her. Now the space between them felt like an ocean. In the darkness, Jeremy waited until her breathing evened into sleep. Then he slipped out of bed and went to his study. He spent the next 4 hours going through the files Travis had provided. The evidence was damning and detailed. Christie had opened offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. She transferred money in small increments to avoid triggering reporting requirements. She created shell companies to hide assets. And Carlos Rhodes was deeper than just an affair. He was running a criminal enterprise, and Christie was his partner. But more than that, Jeremy found something Travis might not have discovered yet. In one of Carlos's emails, there was a reference to the project in Willow Creek. Jeremy knew Willow Creek, a new development 30 miles outside the city. Luxury apartments, aggressively marketed. He pulled up public records. The building had been completed 8 months ago, and 2 months after opening, there had been a major issue with the foundation. The developer had quietly settled with residents and made repairs, keeping it out of the news. But Jeremy found the inspection reports that had been filed with the county. The foundation had been built with substandard concrete. The original inspections had been falsified. 2 deaths at a construction site. Foundation problems covered up. And Carlos Rhodes' name as a silent partner buried in an LLC within an LLC. Jeremy sat back, a plan forming. Travis wanted justice, wanted both Christie and Carlos to pay. And Jeremy knew exactly how to give it to him. He would use what he knew best, forensic accounting, paper trails, evidence that was irrefutable. He would document everything, build a case so airtight that neither Christie nor Carlos could escape. And then he would bring them both down, not in some dramatic confrontation, but the way he dismantled all fraudsters, systematically, thoroughly, and completely. But first, he needed to meet his son. He needed to see Travis alive, hold him, apologize for not being smart enough to question the lie. And together, they would finish this. Chapter 3, The Investigation. Jeremy spent the next 6 days living a double life as meticulously crafted as Christie's own deception. Each morning, he kissed his wife goodbye and drove to his office downtown. But instead of diving into his regular caseload, he used his access to financial databases and his professional network to dig deeper into Carlos Rhodes and Christie's criminal enterprise. What he found was worse than he'd imagined. Carlos Rhodes, 41, had built his reputation as a fast-talking developer who specialized in luxury conversions, taking aging buildings and transforming them into high-end condos. On paper, his business looked legitimate. But Jeremy found the gaps, the irregularities, the patterns that screamed fraud. Rhodes had a network of shell companies that moved money in circles. He'd pay contractors with Company A, which would then invoice Company B, which paid Company C, which eventually paid back to a roads-controlled account. It was a money laundering operation disguised as construction management. But more damning were the building violations. Jeremy found 6 properties where corners had been cut dangerously. The Willow Creek Foundation, a high-rise in Portland where the fire suppression system used substandard materials. An apartment complex where electrical work was done by unlicensed contractors. The construction site deaths Travis had mentioned, Jeremy found the full reports. Gerald Robinson, Marianne's husband, had been the site supervisor. He'd known about the safety violations and looked the other way because he was being paid by Carlos Rhodes through a shell company, and the money had been managed by Christie. Jeremy built a spreadsheet that would have made his professors proud. Every transaction, every violation, every lie was documented and cross-referenced. He had bank statements, emails he'd recovered from Christie's cloud backup. She'd used Travis's birthday as her password. The irony wasn't lost on him. And inspection reports. At night, he came home and performed the role of loving husband. Christie never suspected. She chattered about her day, her friends, her yoga classes. She showed him paint samples for the guest room. She cooked his favorite meals and asked about his work. "You seem distracted lately," she said on Thursday night, 3 days before his meeting with Travis. "Is everything okay?" They were in the kitchen, Christie chopping vegetables for a stir-fry, while Jeremy pretended to read a magazine at the island counter. "Just a complicated case at work," he said. "Lots of moving parts. Anything you can talk about?" "Not really. Confidentiality agreements." He looked up, studied her face. "Christie, do you ever regret anything? In our life together?" Her hand stilled on the cutting board. "What kind of question is that?" "Just thinking about mortality, I guess. Wondering if we've done everything we wanted to do." Christie set down her knife and came around the island. She cupped his face in her hands, looked into his eyes with what appeared to be genuine emotion. "Jeremy, you're the best thing that ever happened to me." "Well," her voice caught, "you and Travis. I regret every day that he's not here. But I don't regret a single moment with you. You've given me security, stability, love. What more could anyone want?" It was such a perfect performance that Jeremy almost believed it. But he'd seen the bank statements. He knew about the Portland condo, the offshore accounts, the lifestyle she'd been building with Carlos Rhodes. Security and stability, yes, she wanted those things. But from him, not with him. "I'm glad," Jeremy said, and kissed her forehead. "I just wanted you to know that I love you, no matter what happens." Something flickered in Christie's expression. Caution? Fear? Before she smiled. "Nothing's going to happen. We're fine. Better than fine." That night, Jeremy couldn't sleep. He lay in the darkness, listening to Christie's breathing, and thought about Travis. His son had been alone for 7 years, living under a false name, working construction in Montana, gathering evidence. Jeremy had failed to protect him once. He wouldn't fail again. On Friday, Jeremy made a call to his friend Larry Hess from the dinner party, the real estate developer who knew Carlos Rhodes. They met for lunch at a steakhouse downtown. "I appreciate you meeting me," Jeremy said over drinks. "I wanted to pick your brain about investment opportunities." Larry was happy to talk. He spent 45 minutes outlining his various projects, the profit margins, the risks. Jeremy listened patiently, then steered the conversation where he needed it. "You mentioned Carlos Rhodes the other night. What's his reputation in the industry?" Larry hesitated, glanced around the restaurant. "Honestly, Carlos is brilliant, but ruthless. He makes money, that's undeniable. But there are rumors. Nothing proven, you understand, but let's just say if I were doing a project with him, I want everything in writing and I'd hire my own inspectors. Safety issues, corners cut, materials swapped out. Inspectors who suddenly get very flexible about code requirements." Larry leaned forward. "Look, I've worked with him twice. Made good money both times. But I wouldn't live in one of his buildings. Anyone else know this?" "Sure. It's an open secret in certain circles. But Carlos has connections. Lawyers, politicians, people who can make problems disappear. So people shut up and take their cut." Larry studied Jeremy. "Why the interest? You're not thinking of investing, are you?" "Just due diligence," Jeremy said smoothly. A friend mentioned him as a potential partner. Tell your friend to be careful. Carlos Rhodes is the kind of guy who'll smile at your funeral while counting the insurance money. After lunch, Jeremy sat in his car and added notes to his file. If Rhodes's reputation was common knowledge, then others might be willing to talk. He made a list of former contractors, inspectors, anyone who'd worked with Rhodes and might have evidence. But he was running out of time. The meeting with Travis was tomorrow night. Jeremy needed to decide how to play this. Should he bring everything to the police immediately? Or wait, build an even stronger case? His phone rang. Christy. Hey, honey. Her voice was sugary sweet. I'm going to Portland tomorrow for the day. Abby, and I want to hit that new boutique she's been raving about. We'll probably make a day of it. Spa, lunch. I'll be back late. You'll be okay for dinner on your own? Portland, where Carlos Rhodes lived, where Christy's secret condo was located. Sure, Jeremy said. Take your time. Enjoy yourself. You're the best. Love you. After she hung up, Jeremy made a decision. He called in a favor from a former colleague, a private investigator named Seth Willis who owed him from a case 3 years ago. Seth, I need surveillance. Tomorrow, starting early. I'll send you the subject's photo and vehicle information. I need to know everywhere she goes, everyone she meets. This about your wife? Seth asked, no judgment in his voice. Yes. Say no more. I'll handle it personally. You'll have photo and video documentation of everything. The next morning, Christy left the house at 9 in her Mercedes, wearing designer jeans and a cashmere sweater. Jeremy watched from the window as she pulled away, then went to his study. Seth sent his first update at 10:47 a.m. Subject met male individual at coffee shop, downtown Portland. Physical contact suggests intimate relationship. Photos attached. The photos showed Christy and Carlos Rhodes embracing in a parking lot, kissing like teenagers. Carlos was classically handsome in that generic way. Tall, fit, perfectly styled hair, expensive watch. The kind of man who looked successful even if he wasn't. More updates followed through the day. Christy and Carlos had lunch at an upscale restaurant. They went to the condo. Seth got photos of them entering together, sent the address which matched Jeremy's records. They stayed for 3 hours. When they emerged, Christy's hair was mussed and her lipstick gone. At 4:30 p.m., Seth sent subject and male individual meeting with third party at construction site. Address attached. Appears to be business meeting. Recording audio. The audio file captured Christy's voice clearly. Told you, Gerald's handled. He's not going to talk about the Willow Creek issues. I made sure of it, but we need to be more careful going forward. If anyone starts connecting the dots. Relax. Carlos's voice, smooth and confident. We've got lawyers. We've got documentation that shows we followed every regulation. Even if someone questions the materials, it's the contractor's fault, not ours. And the deaths at the Mercer project? Settled. Family signed NDAs. It's done, Christy. Stop worrying. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about Jeremy. He's been asking questions lately. Seemed interested when Sean mentioned your name. A pause. Then Carlos. Does he suspect? No. God, no. Jeremy's brilliant with numbers, but he's oblivious about people. He never even realized about us. 7 years, and he had no clue. Travis was the only one who figured it out, and we handled that. Jeremy's hands clenched into fists as he listened. Still, Christy continued, we should be careful. Maybe cool off for a few weeks, not see each other as much. Baby, we've been careful for almost a decade. Everything's fine. The Travis situation was the only risk, and that's behind us. He's gone. Jeremy's grief makes him easy to manipulate. Trust me. The recording continued with logistics, another property they were planning to develop, inspections that needed to be bypassed, contractors who needed payments. Christy was neck-deep in it all. She wasn't just covering for Carlos. She was an active, willing participant in fraud and conspiracy. At 6:45 p.m., Christy texted, heading home now. Spent way too much money, but got some gorgeous things. See you soon. Jeremy didn't respond. At 7:30 p.m., he drove to Mercer's Diner, a roadside establishment 45 minutes from his house, tucked off Highway 9. The parking lot was nearly empty. Jeremy pulled into a spot near the back and waited, his heart hammering. At 8:02 p.m., a pickup truck pulled in beside him. The driver's door opened. Travis stepped out. He was taller than Jeremy remembered, broader in the shoulders. His face had lost its boyish softness, replaced by the hardness of someone who'd survived something terrible. But his eyes were the same, gray-blue, just like Jeremy's. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Travis moved forward and Jeremy was out of his car. They were hugging, both men crying in the parking lot of the diner off Highway 9. "Dad," Travis's voice broke. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I should have found a way sooner. I should have." "No," Jeremy pulled back, gripped his son's shoulders. "No apologies. You survived. That's what matters. You survived and you came back." They went inside, took a booth in the back corner where they could talk privately. Travis looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept properly in weeks. Jeremy wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but Travis spoke first. "I know you got my USB drive. Did you go through everything?" "All of it. And I've been doing my own digging." "Travis, it's worse than you realized. The deaths at the construction sites, the fraud, it's systematic. They've been doing this for years." Travis nodded grimly. "I figured. I could only prove what I could see. But Dad, here's what you need to know. Mom and Carlos think I'm permanently gone. They think I'm too scared to ever come back, that I'll stay hidden forever. That's their mistake. What's your plan?" "My plan?" Travis laughed bitterly. "I want them in prison. Both of them. I want everyone to know what they did, what they are. But I'm one person with questionable evidence. You're a forensic accountant with credentials and professional standing. Together, we can build a case that the authorities can't ignore." Jeremy leaned forward. "I've already started. I have documentation of the money laundering, the offshore accounts, everything. But here's what I'm thinking. We don't just go to the police. We go to the FBI. This crosses state lines, involves multiple jurisdictions. And I have contacts in federal white-collar crime units. Can we trust them? Yes. But more importantly, I know how to present evidence, so it's irrefutable. We build the case so tight that even Carlos's lawyers can't find a crack." They spent the next 3 hours going over everything. Jeremy shared what he'd learned. Travis filled in gaps with his own investigation. They built a timeline, identified every person involved, mapped out the money trail. "There's one more thing," Travis said as they prepared to leave. "Once we go public with this, Mom's going to flip. She'll do anything to save herself. You need to be ready for that." "I am." "No, Dad. I mean really ready. She'll lie about you, make accusations, try to turn this around. You need to protect yourself. Document everything. Record conversations if you can. Don't let her corner you alone." Jeremy studied his son's face, saw the pain there. "She really threatened you? Told you she'd have you arrested if you came back?" "She looked me in the eyes and said I was a mistake she should have fixed years ago." Travis's voice was flat. "Carlos said they'd plant drugs in my car, guns in my apartment, whatever it took. They had photos ready, documents, a whole narrative about how I was a troubled kid who'd stolen from your firm. I was 19, Dad. I was terrified. So I ran. I'm going to make her pay for that," Jeremy said quietly. "For all of it." "We both will," Travis corrected. Together, they made plans for Travis to stay hidden a while longer, to keep gathering evidence while Jeremy laid the groundwork with the FBI. They exchanged new, secure phone numbers. And when they said goodbye in that parking lot, Jeremy held his son tight and made a promise. "This ends. Soon. And when it does, you come home. Really home. No more hiding." Jeremy drove back with a clarity he hadn't felt in 7 years. The grief that had defined him, the loss that had nearly destroyed him, all of it had been a lie. But now he had truth. He had evidence. He had his son, and he had a plan that would bring Christy and Carlos Rhodes down completely. Chapter 4. The Federal Case. Monday morning, Jeremy walked into the FBI field office downtown with a briefcase containing 3 years of evidence compiled by Travis and enhanced by his own investigation. He'd secured a meeting with Special Agent Jimmy Harvey, a veteran white-collar crime investigator Jeremy had worked with twice on fraud cases. Harvey was in his late 40s, with graying hair and the patient demeanor of someone who'd seen every type of financial crime imaginable. He listened without interruption as Jeremy laid out the entire story, Christie's affair, Travis's fake death, the insurance fraud, Carlos Rhodes's construction fraud, the deaths, everything. You understand what you're alleging here? Harvey said when Jeremy finished. Conspiracy, fraud, money laundering, manslaughter at minimum. Your wife will face serious prison time. I understand. Jeremy's voice was steady. I want justice. For my son, for the workers who died, for everyone they've defrauded. Harvey spent the next hour reviewing the documents Jeremy had brought. Bank statements, offshore account information, construction records, inspection reports, emails, photos, the USB drive from Travis. Jeremy had organized everything chronologically, with a master index that connected every transaction to a specific crime. This is thorough, Harvey admitted. Remarkably thorough. You've essentially done our job for us. I'm a forensic accountant. It's what I do. Where's your son now? Safe. And willing to testify when needed. But he wants assurances, witness protection if necessary, immunity from any charges Christie or Rhodes might try to fabricate against him. Harvey made notes. I'll need to bring in my supervisor, possibly the DOJ. This is big, Jeremy. Multiple jurisdictions, federal crimes, potential RICO implications if we can prove a continuing criminal enterprise. We're talking years of investigation and prosecution. How long before you can move on them? We don't move on them. We investigate. Could take months to verify everything, build the case properly, get search warrants, financial records from banks. Months. Jeremy leaned forward. These people let my son believe he was hunted for 7 years. They're still actively committing fraud. How many more people need to get hurt while you dot I's and cross T's? I understand your frustration, Harvey said calmly. But we do this right, or we do it not at all. Defense attorneys will tear apart anything that looks rushed or sloppy. You want them in prison? Then we build an unshakable case. Jeremy took a breath, nodded. What do you need from me? Everything you have, which you've already provided. Access to your own financial records to verify you had no knowledge or involvement. And your son, I need to interview him, take his formal statement. He'll cooperate fully. One more thing. Harvey's expression grew serious. You need to act normal at home. Don't confront your wife. Don't change your routine. If she suspects, she could destroy evidence, flee the country, tip off Rhodes. Can you do that? Continue living with her, pretending everything's fine. Jeremy thought of Christie kissing him goodnight, of her hands on his face telling him he was the best thing that ever happened to her, of 7 years of grief she'd manufactured and maintained. Yes, he said, I can do that. The investigation began in earnest. Harvey brought in a team, financial analysts, another agent to handle the construction fraud angle, a prosecutor from the DOJ. They subpoenaed bank record from the Cayman Islands, got warrants for Christie and Carlos's communications, started interviewing former contractors and construction workers. Jeremy went about his daily life. He worked his regular cases, came home to Christie, attended dinner parties and social events. He played the role of devoted husband so well that even he sometimes forgot he was acting. But he was also documenting everything. He had a recording app on his phone that ran constantly when he was home. He photographed documents he found in Christie's home office. He tracked her movements, her calls, her moods. And 3 times a week, he met with Travis at different locations. A park 40 miles away, a coffee shop in a town where nobody knew them, the diner on Highway 9. They shared information, coordinated with Harvey, planned for what came next. You've changed, Travis said during one of these meetings. It was mid-December now, nearly a month into the FBI investigation. You seem harder. I'm just seeing clearly now, Jeremy replied. For years I thought I was dealing with grief. Turns out I was dealing with betrayal. Does it help? Seeing her knowing what she is. Jeremy considered. It helps me understand that the woman I married doesn't exist. Maybe she never did. Christie performed a role, and I was the audience. But the performance is over. Travis looked at his father with something like admiration. I was scared you'd try to forgive her. Or make excuses. There are no excuses for what she did. To you, to those workers, to me. She made her choices. Jeremy met his son's eyes. And now she'll face the consequences. The FBI moved methodically. They confirmed the offshore accounts, traced the money from the life insurance policy, documented every building code violation at Carlos's properties. They interviewed the families of the workers who died, found that the settlements had been coercive, the NDAs signed under duress. In mid-December, Harvey called Jeremy to the field office. "We've got enough," he said without preamble. "The DOJ is ready to move forward. We'll execute search warrants simultaneously at your home, Carlos Rhodes's properties, and several shell company addresses. We'll arrest both of them on federal charges." When? December 20th. Friday. "We want to catch them both together if possible. Make sure neither gets a warning. Can you verify Christy will be home that morning? She's usually home until 9 when she goes to yoga." "Perfect. Jeremy, you understand how this will go down? Federal agents will come to your house with a warrant. They'll search everything. You'll be questioned. Your neighbors will see. This becomes public. Understand. Your wife will likely make bail pending trial. She'll be forbidden from contacting certain people, including Rhodes, but she'll be released. Are you prepared for that?" Jeremy had thought about this moment for weeks. "Will I be legally required to let her stay in the house?" "No. It's your home. You can change the locks. Ask her to leave." "Then that's what I'll do." Harvey nodded slowly. "One more thing. We're going to freeze her assets, all the accounts we can link to the fraud. She's going to be angry and desperate. Be careful. She can't hurt me anymore," Jeremy said. "She already did the worst thing possible." But he was wrong about that. Christy had one more card to play. Chapter 5, The Raid. December 20th dawned cold and gray. Jeremy woke at 6, dressed for work as usual. Christy was still asleep, her blonde hair spread across the pillow, her face peaceful. He looked at her for a long moment, memorizing this last image of his wife before everything exploded. In the kitchen, he made coffee and waited. Harvey had said they'd arrive at 8:30. Jeremy had 3 hours to maintain his performance one final time. Christy emerged at 7, wrapped in a silk robe, yawning. "Morning," she murmured, kissing his cheek. "You're up early. Couldn't sleep. Big presentation today." The lie came easily now. She poured coffee, sat across from him at the island. "Jeremy, I've been thinking. For Christmas, maybe we should go away somewhere? Just the two of us. We haven't traveled in so long. Where would you want to go?" "I don't know. Caribbean? Europe? Somewhere warm and far away where we can just be together." Her hand covered his. "I feel like we've been drifting lately. I want to reconnect." Jeremy studied her face. Was this genuine? Or had she sensed something? Was she planning to flee? He squeezed her hand. "That sounds perfect. Let's plan it for New Year's." She smiled, relieved. "Really? You're not too busy." "Never too busy for you." They finished breakfast. Christy went upstairs to get ready for yoga. Jeremy texted Harvey, "On schedule. She's getting ready to leave. We'll delay her." At 8:15, Jeremy went upstairs. "Christy, can you help me with something before you go? I can't find that warranty information for the dishwasher. It's making that noise again." Christy sighed, but followed him to the kitchen. "Where did you look?" "The file cabinet, but The doorbell rang. Jeremy checked his watch. 8:27 a.m. 3 minutes early. "I'll get it," he said, his heart suddenly hammering. This was it. He opened the door to find 4 federal agents, Harvey at the front. Behind them, 3 sedans were parked in the driveway. "Jeremy Best?" Harvey said formally, holding up his badge. "We have a warrant to search this property in connection with an ongoing federal investigation." Christy appeared in the hallway. "What? Jeremy, what's going on?" Harvey stepped inside. "Christy Best? You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and filing false insurance claims." He nodded to a female agent who moved forward with handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." Christy's face went white, then red. "This is insane. Jeremy, tell them. This is a mistake." "Ma'am, please don't resist," the agent said, turning Christy around to cuff her hands behind her back. "I'm not resisting." "Jeremy." Christy's voice rose to a shriek. "Tell them. You know I would never. Jeremy, please." Jeremy stood silent, watching as they read Christy her rights. Her eyes locked on his, filled with panic and betrayal and fury. "You knew," she whispered. "Oh my God, you knew." "Yes," Jeremy said quietly. I knew. How long? Since Travis sent me the package. Christie's face transformed from panic to pure rage. Travis, that little shit is alive? Where is he? Where the fuck is he? Somewhere you can't hurt him, Jeremy said. Harvey interrupted. Ma'am, we need to take you downtown now. You can call a lawyer from there. As they led Christie toward the door, she turned back to Jeremy. You're going to regret this. I will destroy you. Everything you have, everything you are, I will take it all. You already tried that, Jeremy said. 7 years ago. It didn't work. They took her out to one of the sedans. Through the window, Jeremy watched neighbors gathering on their lawns, phones out, filming. Christie's head was down, her body rigid with rage as they put her in the back seat. Harvey stayed behind with the other agents as they began searching the house. Carlos Rhodes was arrested simultaneously at his office. Both will be arraigned this afternoon. What happens now? We search, document everything. You're free to go to work if you want, but we'll be here most of the day. Jeremy shook his head. I'll stay. Answer any questions you have. By noon, the agents had found everything. Christie's laptop with incriminating emails, documents in her home office, even a burner phone hidden in her dresser that contained messages to Carlos. It was all being photographed, cataloged, taken as evidence. Jeremy's phone rang constantly. Friends, colleagues, everyone who'd seen the news reports. He ignored most of them, but answered when he saw it was Travis. Dad, I'm watching the news. They got her. Both of them. They're being arraigned this afternoon. Travis was quiet for a moment. I thought I'd feel better, seeing her arrested. But I just feel empty. I know. But Travis, it's done. You can come home now. Really home. Not yet. Not until the trial's over. I don't trust her not to try something. Jeremy couldn't argue with that. Harvey had warned him. Christie would be out on bail within hours, and desperate people did unpredictable things. The arraignment was at 3 p.m. Jeremy attended, sitting in the back of the courtroom. Christie had already secured a lawyer, Nicholas Ryder, an expensive criminal defense attorney from Seattle known for getting wealthy clients minimal sentences. Ryder argued for low bail, painted Christie as a respected member of the community with no criminal record and no flight risk. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Adriana Nielsen, countered with evidence of offshore accounts and the severity of the charges. The judge set bail at $250,000, which Jeremy knew Christie could make. She was released within 2 hours, her face a mask of fury as she walked out of the courthouse with Ryder. Jeremy had already gone home and changed the locks. He'd packed Christie's essential belongings, clothes, toiletries, personal items, and left them in the garage. He'd also gotten a restraining order preventing her from contacting Travis. At 7 p.m., Christie's Mercedes pulled into the driveway. Jeremy watched from the window as she tried her key, found it didn't work. She pounded on the door. Jeremy, open this door. This is my house, too. He opened it, keeping the chain on. Your lawyer will be in touch about property division. You need to find somewhere else to stay. You can't kick me out of my own home. Actually, I can. The house is in my name only. You're welcome to fight me on it in civil court, but right now, you're not coming in. Christie's face contorted. You self-righteous bastard. You think you're so smart, so much better than me. But you're nothing. I wasted 20 years on you, pretending to love a boring, weak man who couldn't even satisfy me in bed. Then you should be relieved to leave, Jeremy said calmly. Where's Travis? I know you know. Tell me. You'll see him at your trial. Wade testifies against you. I'm his mother. You're the woman who threatened her own son to cover up fraud. You lost the right to call yourself his mother the day you told him he was a mistake. Christie's mouth opened and closed. He told you that. He told me everything. Every threat. Every lie. Every moment of fear you put him through. It's all documented. And it's all going to come out at trial. For a moment, Christie's face crumpled, actual emotion breaking through the mask. But then she straightened, and the rage returned. You want a war? Fine. I'll give you a war. By the time I'm done, you'll wish you'd stayed blind and grateful. She got back in her car and screeched out of the driveway. Jeremy closed the door, his hands shaking now that the confrontation was over. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're going to pay for this. Both of you. Jeremy showed it to Harvey the next day. The FBI traced the number to a burner phone purchased with cash, but they added it to the file as evidence of witness intimidation. Chapter 6. The Unraveling. The next 3 months were a blur of legal proceedings, media attention, and fallout. The story was irresistible to local news. Suburban wife fakes son's death for insurance money while helping lover run criminal construction business. It was tawdry and dramatic, and everyone wanted details. Jeremy's phone rang constantly with interview requests. He declined them all, issued a single statement through Harvey: "I'm cooperating fully with federal investigators," and asked for privacy during this difficult time. But privacy was impossible. Reporters camped outside his house. Colleagues whispered in break rooms. Clients asked if he was trustworthy, if his home problems affected his work. Jeremy handled it with the same calm competence he brought to balance sheets, methodically, thoroughly, showing no emotion. Christy, meanwhile, was unraveling. Without access to the offshore accounts, all frozen, without Jeremy's income, without Carlos, who'd been denied bail due to flight risk, she was scrambling. She'd moved in with Abby and Sean Williamson initially, but that lasted only 2 weeks before Abby kicked her out, claiming she couldn't handle the media attention. Turns out, Travis said when he and Jeremy met in January, Abby's more interested in her reputation than her friendship. Who knew? Jeremy had filled Travis in on all the social circle fallout. Marianne Shepard had divorced Gerald after learning about his involvement in the construction fraud. Sean Williamson was under investigation for potential knowledge of Rhodes's activities. Half their former friends had either cut contact entirely or reached out to Jeremy with awkward apologies for not seeing Christy's true nature. "People are cowards," Jeremy said simply. "They follow whatever narrative seems safest." Travis studied his father. They were at the diner again, same booth. "You're different now. Harder. Is that permanent? Would you prefer I go back to being naive?" "No. I miss him, the guy who believed the best in people. That guy's son was alive, and he didn't know it. I don't want to be him anymore." The trial was set for March. In the meantime, the FBI's investigation had expanded. They found evidence linking Carlos Rhodes to 3 other developers in similar fraudulent schemes. The Willow Creek settlement had been reopened. Families of the workers who died were pursuing civil suits. Christie's lawyer, Nicholas Ryder, tried every trick. He filed motions to suppress evidence, motions to dismiss, motions to separate Christie's trial from Carlos's. None of them worked. The evidence was too solid, too well documented. In February, Ryder approached Jeremy through Harvey with a plea deal offer. Christie would plead guilty to the insurance fraud in exchange for dropping the conspiracy charges. She'd face 3 to 5 years. "No," Jeremy said immediately. "Jeremy, think about this," Harvey cautioned. "A trial is risky. Juries are unpredictable. A plea deal guarantees she faces consequences. She threatened my son. She participated in fraud that killed people. 3 to 5 years isn't justice. The construction fraud charges might not stick to her specifically. We can prove she knew about it, helped launder money, but proving she's directly responsible for the deaths? That's harder. The jury might see her as just a woman in love making bad choices. Then we make sure they see the truth." Travis, present at this meeting, spoke up. "Dad's right. If she gets a light sentence, she'll be out in 3 years. She could come after us again. We need her locked up for as long as possible." Harvey sighed. "Okay, we go to trial. But understand, this means Travis has to testify. His story will be public. The defense will try to discredit him, make him look like an unstable kid who ran away and made up stories." "I can handle it," Travis said. "I've been handling it for 7 years." The trial began on March 15th in federal court. The courtroom was packed. Media, curious onlookers, families of the workers who died, former friends and colleagues. Jeremy sat in the front row, Travis beside him. Christy entered in a tasteful gray suit, her hair pulled back, her expression composed. She looked nothing like the woman who'd screamed threats in Jeremy's driveway. She looked like a victim. The prosecution's case, led by Adriana Nielsen, was methodical and devastating. They presented the financial records, the offshore accounts, the insurance policy. They showed the emails between Christy and Carlos planning Travis's fake death. They brought in the post office clerk who'd given Jeremy the package. They detailed the construction fraud, the deaths, the money trails. Nicholas Ryder's defense strategy was to paint Christy as a victim herself, a woman manipulated by her charming, criminal boyfriend into progressively worse behavior. She'd started with an affair, he argued, and Carlos had gradually pulled her into his schemes. She wasn't evil, just weak. Ladies and gentlemen, Ryder said in his opening statement, Christy Best is not a criminal mastermind. She's a woman who made terrible decisions because she fell for the wrong man. Yes, she had an affair. Yes, she participated in fraudulent activities. But she did so under coercion and manipulation. Carlos Rhodes is the true villain here. The prosecution countered by showing Christie's active role. The emails where she suggested specific schemes. The offshore account she opened. Her coldness when discussing Travis's disappearance. On the fourth day, Travis took the stand. Jeremy watched his son walk to the witness box, place his hand on the Bible, swear to tell the truth. Travis looked young despite his 26 years, vulnerable in his suit and tie. Adriana Nielsen walked him through his testimony gently. Travis explained how he'd discovered the affair, how Christy and Carlos had threatened him, how they'd faked his death and forced him into hiding. Can you tell the jury what your mother said to you that last day? Nielsen asked. Travis's voice shook slightly. She said I was a mistake she should have fixed years ago. She said I was ruining her life, and if I ever came back, she'd make sure I went to prison for crimes I didn't commit. She had documents ready, fake evidence of theft, drug dealing, everything. Carlos said they'd planted drugs in my car, just in case. I was 19. I was terrified. Did you believe they would follow through on these threats? Yes, absolutely. My mother looked at me like I was nothing, like I was just an obstacle in her way. Nicholas Ryder's cross-examination was brutal. He tried to make Travis seem unstable, questioned why he hadn't gone to police, suggested he'd run away for other reasons, and made up this story. Isn't it true, Ryder asked, that you had behavioral issues in high school? Depression, anxiety? I was a normal teenager. Didn't you see a therapist? For college stress. Lots of kids do. Did your mother ever actually threaten you? Or did you interpret normal parental discipline as threats? Travis's jaw tightened. She told me I was a mistake. She had documents ready to frame me. That's not discipline. That's criminal conspiracy. Or it's the story of a troubled young man who's angry at his mother for having an affair. Objection. Nielsen stood. Counsel is testifying, not asking questions. Sustained, the judge said. Mr. Ryder, ask questions. Ryder tried to shake Travis's story, but couldn't. Travis had lived with this truth for 7 years. He knew every detail, could answer every question, and the evidence backed him up completely. When Travis stepped down, Jeremy met his eyes. Travis looked exhausted but resolute. They'd gotten through the worst. Christy took the stand in her own defense, despite Ryder's visible reluctance. She cried, claimed she'd been manipulated, insisted she never meant to hurt anyone. I love Travis, she said, tears streaming. I would never hurt my son. Yes, I made mistakes. The affair was wrong. But I never threatened him. He ran away because he was angry about the affair, and Carlos convinced me we should stage his death because Travis had threatened to go to the police about things that weren't true. I was scared and stupid, and I went along with it. But I never stopped loving my son. It was a good performance. But the prosecution's rebuttal was better. Mrs. Best, Nielsen said, if you loved your son so much, why did you take out a $750,000 life insurance policy on him 3 months before his supposed death? Carlos suggested it. He said all parents should have insurance on their children. And why? If you were so manipulated by Carlos Rhodes, do your emails show you suggesting specific ways to hide assets, launder money, and avoid detection? I was trying to protect us both. By participating in fraud that killed 2 construction workers, I didn't know about the safety violations. Nielsen presented the emails. Here's one from you to Carlos. The inspectors are asking questions about the Mercer site. I've transferred additional funds to the account we discussed for handling them. You knew. You paid the bribes. You were an active, willing participant. Christie's composure cracked. I was in love. People do stupid things when they're in love. Did you love Carlos Rhodes more than your own son? Of course not. Then why let your son believe he was hunted for 7 years while you lived comfortably with your husband and your lover? Christie had no answer. Chapter 7. The Verdict. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Every day, Jeremy sat in that courtroom and watched his wife's lies unravel. Every day, the evidence mounted higher. Christie's defense crumbled piece by piece until even Nicholas Ryder looked defeated. Carlos Rhodes's trial ran concurrently, and the two cases fed into each other. Prosecutors showed how Christie and Carlos had worked together, planned together, benefited together. They weren't victim and manipulator. They were partners. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Jeremy waited in a conference room at the federal building with Travis and Harvey, unable to eat, barely able to breathe. 7 years of grief, 1 month of investigation, 3 weeks of trial. Everything came down to 12 strangers. On March 29th at 2:47 p.m., the jury reached a verdict. The courtroom was silent as the jury foreman stood. Jeremy held Travis's hand, something he hadn't done since his son was a child. On the count of conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, how do you find? Guilty. On the count of money laundering? Guilty. On the count of wire fraud? Guilty. 7 counts total. Guilty on all of them. Christie's face went white. She swayed in her chair, and Nicholas Ryder had to steady her. Across the courtroom, Carlos Rhodes received identical verdicts. The judge set sentencing for 6 weeks out and denied bail pending sentencing. Christie was remanded into custody immediately. As the marshals led her away in handcuffs, Christie turned and looked at Jeremy one last time. Not with rage anymore, with something like disbelief, as if even now she couldn't believe this was happening, that her performance had finally failed. Jeremy watched her disappear through the door and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, not even relief. Just a vast emptiness where his marriage used to be. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Jeremy read a brief, prepared statement. Justice has been served. My son and I are grateful to the FBI, the prosecutors, and everyone who helped bring the truth to light. We ask for privacy as we rebuild our lives. Reporters shouted questions. Jeremy ignored them, walked to his car with Travis. They drove in silence to the diner on Highway 9, their unofficial headquarters for this entire ordeal. It's really over, Travis said, staring at his untouched coffee. I keep thinking there's going to be another twist, another lie to uncover. It's over, Jeremy confirmed. She's going to prison. So is Carlos. How do you feel? Jeremy considered. How did he feel? The woman he'd loved for 22 years was a stranger who'd caused unimaginable pain. The life he'd built was revealed as a lie. But his son was alive, sitting across from him, safe. I feel like I can breathe again, Jeremy said finally. For 7 years, I've been suffocating under grief that wasn't even real. Now it's just done. What happens now? Do we just go back to normal life? There's no going back, but we can build something new. Together. Travis nodded slowly. I'd like that. I missed you, Dad. Missed having a family. You never stop having a family. I never stopped being your father, even when I thought you were gone. They talked for hours that night, making plans. Travis would move back to the city, find an apartment, enroll in college to finish his degree. Jeremy would keep working, keep their home, rebuild his life one day at a time. They'd have dinner every week, make up for lost time, learn how to be father and son again. When they finally left the diner, it was after midnight. Jeremy hugged Travis goodbye and drove home to an empty house that felt more peaceful than it had in 7 years. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. Sentencing day was May 10th. Jeremy and Travis arrived at the courthouse together, walking past the cameras and reporters who'd been following this case for months. It had become a national story, the suburban scandal that revealed hidden darkness in an ordinary marriage. The courtroom was packed again. Families of the construction workers who died sat in the front rows. Marion Shepard was there, recently divorced from Gerald, who'd pled guilty to his own charges. Sean and Abby Williamson were notably absent. Christy was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hair pulled back, her face bare of makeup. She'd aged 10 years and 6 weeks. Carlos Rhodes followed, equally diminished. The judge, a stern woman named Lydia Eaton, reviewed the case thoroughly before pronouncing sentence. Mrs. Best, Judge Eaton said, "You have been convicted of serious federal crimes. Your actions destroyed your family, endangered public safety, and showed a breathtaking disregard for human life and the law. You faked your own son's death for financial gain. You participated in construction fraud that killed 2 workers. You laundered money and defrauded insurance companies. You showed no remorse until you were caught, and even then your primary concern was avoiding consequences." Christy stood motionless, her lawyer beside her. The prosecution has recommended 15 years. The defense has argued for leniency based on your lack of prior criminal history. I've considered both arguments. However, I've also considered the profound harm you caused to your son, who lived in fear for 7 years, to your husband, who grieved a death that never occurred, to the families of workers who died because of the fraud you facilitated. Judge Eaton paused. I sentence you to 18 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years supervised release. You will also pay restitution in the amount of $1.2 million to cover the insurance fraud, legal costs, and compensation to the workers' families. Christy's legs buckled. Nicholas Ryder had to hold her up. Carlos Rhodes received 25 years for his more extensive role in the construction fraud, money laundering, and the deaths at his sites. As the marshals led them both away, Christy looked back one more time, but not at Jeremy, at Travis, her son, whom she tried to erase, who'd brought about her downfall. Travis met her gaze steadily, his face showing no emotion. Christy opened her mouth as if to speak, but nothing came out. Then she was gone. Outside, Travis let out a long breath. 18 years. She'll be 61 when she gets out. If she gets out early for good behavior, maybe 58, Jeremy said. Either way, the best years of her life are gone. Is that enough? For what she did? Jeremy looked at his son. Is any sentence enough? She can't give you back 7 years. Can't undo the grief she caused or the people who died. But she'll spend the next 2 decades in prison, knowing her greed and selfishness cost her everything. That's something. Adriana Nielsen approached them. Gentlemen, I wanted to thank you both. Cases this clean are rare. Your documentation and testimony made this possible. What happens to the civil suits? Jeremy asked. The workers' families? We're pursuing assets. The offshore accounts, Christy's share of your home, Carlos's business holdings. It'll take time, but they'll get compensation. Nielsen's expression softened. How are you both doing? One day at a time, Travis said. If you need anything, counseling resources, victim services, let me know. She shook their hands and left. Jeremy and Travis walked to their cars in the parking garage, away from the media circus. Dad, I need to tell you something, Travis said. During the trial, I realized I'm angry, not just at Mom and Carlos, but at everything. 7 years of my life gone. Can't get those back. Can't undo the fear or the loneliness or missing out on everything. That's normal. Maybe, but I don't want to be angry forever. I don't want what she did to define the rest of my life. Jeremy put his hand on Travis's shoulder. Then don't let it. She took 7 years. Don't give her any more. Build the life you want. Be the man you want to be. That's the real revenge. Living well. Travis nodded slowly. I'm going to need therapy. Probably a lot of it. So am I. We'll figure it out together. They stood in the parking garage, father and son, survivors of the same betrayal. Around them, life continued. Cars coming and going, people heading to court dates and meetings and ordinary errands. The world hadn't stopped for their tragedy, and it wouldn't stop for their recovery. But they'd survived. They'd exposed the truth, gotten justice, and found each other again. And that was enough to start rebuilding. Chapter 9. The Aftermath. 6 months later, Jeremy stood in the backyard of his house watching Travis help install new patio furniture. His son had moved into an apartment downtown, enrolled in online courses to finish his psychology degree, and started working part-time at a construction firm, legitimate this time, where he used his experience to help ensure safety compliance. You know, Travis said, tightening a bolt, there's a weird irony in me working construction after everything with Carlos. You're making sure what he did doesn't happen again. That's not irony. That's redemption. Travis straightened, wiped sweat from his forehead. Dr. Spence says I'm fixating on fixing things I can't change. Processing trauma by trying to prevent future traumas. Is that bad? Not necessarily, as long as I'm aware of it. Travis grinned. Therapy's weird, Dad. I recommend it. Jeremy smiled. He'd been seeing Dr. Lynn Spence as well, working through his own anger and grief and the complicated feelings about his failed marriage. It helped. Slowly, the doorbell rang. Jeremy went inside to find Seth Willis, the private investigator who documented Christie's affair, standing on the porch with a package. This came to my office, Seth said. Addressed to you, but sent to me first. Figured it might be important given everything. Jeremy took the package cautiously. It was from a law firm in Seattle. Inside was a letter from Nicholas Ryder. Mr. Best, this is the most unusual letter I've written in 30 years of practice. My client, Christy Best, has asked me to convey the following message to you. She has authorized me to confirm that these are her words, though I advised against sending this letter. Christy acknowledges the full scope of her actions and their consequences. She does not expect forgiveness and is not asking for it. However, she wanted you to know certain truths that never came out at trial. The affair with Carlos Rhodes began as Christy claimed, but her participation in his criminal enterprise was entirely voluntary. She was not manipulated. She was a willing partner who saw an opportunity for wealth and excitement she felt was lacking in her marriage to you. The decision to fake Travis's death was primarily hers. Carlos wanted to simply pay Travis off or threaten legal action, but Christy pushed for a more permanent solution. She told me, and I quote, I wanted a clean break from that part of my life. Travis knowing about the affair made me feel trapped. Making him disappear solved multiple problems. She maintains she did love Travis when he was young, but grew to resent him as he got older and represented obligations she no longer wanted. She's aware this makes her sound sociopathic. She says she probably is. Regarding you specifically, Christy says the worst part of prison is knowing she gave up a good man for a fantasy. Carlos Rhodes has cut off all contact with her and is cooperating with prosecutors in other cases to reduce his sentence. Meanwhile, you built a case that put her in prison and reclaimed your son. She admits you were smarter than she ever gave you credit for. She wanted me to tell you this because, in her words, Jeremy deserves to know he was never the problem. I was. He built a good life, and I burned it down for no reason except my own selfishness. I hope he and Travis find happiness. They earned it. I include this letter not because Christy deserves any consideration, but because sometimes victims need closure. Do with this information what you will. Respectfully, Nicholas Ryder, ESQ. Jeremy read the letter twice, then carried it outside where Travis was finishing the furniture. Letter from Mom, Jeremy said, handing it to Travis. Travis read it silently, his expression neutral. When he finished, he folded it carefully. I expected her to still be making excuses. Blaming Carlos, blaming circumstances, blaming us. Travis looked at his father. This is almost honest, in a fucked up way. Does it change anything? No. She still did everything she did. But Travis paused, thinking. Dr. Spence talks about how people can be multiple things at once. Mom was a mother who loved me when I was young. And she's a criminal who tried to erase me when I was inconvenient. Both can be true. Complicated. Everything about this is complicated. Travis stood, surveyed their work. But you know what? We're still here. We're having dinner together. Planning to watch the game on Sunday. Building furniture in our backyard. She's in prison and we're okay. More than okay. Jeremy looked at his son, 27 now, stronger and more confident than he'd been at 19. Travis had survived something that would have broken many people, and he'd come out the other side with purpose and determination. I'm proud of you, Jeremy said. I know I don't say it enough, but I am. What you did, gathering evidence for years, staying strong, coming back, that took incredible courage. I learned it from you, Travis replied. You spent 7 years grieving and never became bitter. When you found out the truth, you didn't fall apart. You built a case. You got justice. You showed me what strength really looks like. They finished the patio furniture as the sun set, then ordered pizza and watched a baseball game. Simple things. Normal things. The kind of father-son evening Jeremy had thought he'd never have again. Later, after Travis left, Jeremy sat on his new patio furniture and looked at the stars. He thought about Christy in prison, about the 22 years of marriage that turned out to be largely fiction, about the grief and anger and eventual acceptance. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Best, this is Melinda Richardson from the FBI. Agent Harvey wanted me to inform you that additional charges have been filed against Carlos Rhodes based on evidence uncovered in your case. 4 more developers have been arrested. Your documentation is helping dismantle a network of construction fraud across 3 states. Thank you for your cooperation and your thoroughness. Jeremy smiled slightly. Even now, the case was bearing fruit. More criminals caught, more victims getting justice. Christy and Carlos's downfall had triggered a cascade effect that would make the construction industry safer. He texted back, "Glad it's helping. Let me know if you need anything else." Another text came through, this one from Travis. "Thanks for today, Dad. Let's do it again soon. Maybe teach me some of that forensic accounting stuff. Might come in handy." Jeremy replied, "Anytime. Love you, son. Love you too." Jeremy sat on his patio until the stars were fully visible, thinking about redemption and justice and second chances. Christy had stolen 7 years from his son and from him, but they'd taken back control, exposed the truth, and built something new from the wreckage. Tomorrow, Jeremy would go to work and close out accounts. He'd have lunch with colleagues, file reports, live his ordinary life. But now that life included Travis, dinners and phone calls and plans for the future. The family that Christy tried to destroy had survived and rebuilt itself stronger. In the end, that was the real victory. Not Christy in prison or Carlos paying restitution, but Jeremy and Travis together, healing, moving forward, refusing to let betrayal define them. Jeremy went inside, locked the doors, and slept peacefully for the first time in 7 years. The nightmares of his son's supposed death were gone, replaced by the reality of Travis alive and safe. The grief had been exposed as a lie, and in its place was something stronger: hope. The package that had started everything sat on Jeremy's desk in his study. The brown paper wrapping preserved as evidence at trial now returned to him. Inside was Travis's note: "I love you, Dad. I never stopped." Jeremy had framed it, not as a reminder of pain, but as a testament to survival. Travis had loved him enough to come back, to risk everything to expose the truth. And Jeremy had loved his son enough to burn down his entire life to protect him. That was family, not biology or legal documents or years of shared history, but the choice to fight for each other when everything else fell apart. Christy had been wrong about many things, but she'd been right about one. Jeremy and Travis had earned their happiness. They'd paid for it in grief and fear and years of separation. And now they're going to claim it, one ordinary day at a time, building a life that was finally, truly theirs. The story that began with a mysterious package ended not with dramatic revenge or catharsis, but with something simpler and more profound: a father and son together again, choosing to move forward. And that was enough. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Stranger at My Door. The rain hammered against my study window as I reviewed quarterly reports for my security consulting firm. After 15 years building my company from nothing, I'd learned to appreciate these quiet Sunday evenings. My wife, Rebecca, was at her book club, or so she claimed, and the house felt peaceful without her constant chatter about her yoga instructor friends and their latest gossip. The doorbell's chime cut through the silence. I glanced at my watch. 8:47 p.m. Too late for neighbors, too early for emergencies. Setting down my whiskey, I walked to the front door, noting the small figure huddled under our porch light through the peephole. When I opened the door, a little girl with auburn hair and striking green eyes identical to mine, looked up at me with a mixture of relief and desperation. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, soaked to the bone despite the small backpack clutched to her chest. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the storm. Before I could react, she launched herself into my arms, her small body trembling against mine. "Dad, I missed you so much. They told me you didn't want to see me anymore, but I knew that wasn't true." My blood turned to ice. I'd never seen this child before in my life, yet she felt familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. "Who are you?" I managed, my voice hoarse. She pulled back, confusion replacing the joy in those emerald eyes. "I'm your daughter. I'm Lily. Mommy Rebecca said you were too busy to visit, but Mrs. Patterson died, and they said I had to come home now." The name Rebecca hit me like a sledgehammer. My wife Rebecca. But we'd never had children. She'd claimed for years that she was infertile, that it was her greatest regret. I'd accepted it, built our life around just the two of us. "Sweetheart," I said carefully, crouching to her level, "I think there's been a mistake." "What's your last name?" "Morrison," she said without hesitation. "Lily Grace Morrison, just like you taught me." "Morrison, my last name." My hands began to shake as I studied her face more closely. The eyes, the stubborn set of her jaw, even the way she tilted her head when confused. It was like looking into a mirror that reflected my own childhood features. "Come inside," I said quietly, leading her to the living room. "You're freezing." As I wrapped her in a throw blanket, my mind raced. If this child was truly mine, it meant Rebecca had lied about everything. Not just her infertility, but about an entire pregnancy, birth, and apparently giving away our child. "Lily," I said gently, "tell me about where you've been living." "With Mrs. Patterson in Portland. She was nice, but she got sick. Mommy Rebecca would visit sometimes and bring me presents. She said you were always working and that it was better if I stayed with Mrs. Patterson until you weren't so busy anymore." Each word was another nail in the coffin of my marriage. Rebecca had been making trips to Portland for spa weekends for the past 8 years. I never questioned it, trusted her completely. Did Mommy Rebecca ever bring anyone else with her? Lily nodded enthusiastically. "Uncle Todd. He was funny and brought me toys. They said they were planning a surprise for you, but Mrs. Patterson got worried before they could tell you." "Todd." My stomach dropped. Todd Brennan, Rebecca's friend from college who'd moved to Portland 5 years ago. The same Todd she'd insisted was just a friend when I'd questioned their frequent phone calls. The front door opened, and Rebecca's laughter echoed through the foyer, followed by a deeper male voice I recognized. They were both home early, and they weren't alone. "Lily," I whispered urgently, "I need you to stay very quiet and hide behind this couch, okay? Don't come out until I tell you." Her eyes widened with fear, but she nodded and scrambled behind the furniture just as Rebecca walked into the living room, arm in arm with Todd Brennan. They both froze when they saw me standing there, their faces draining of color in perfect synchronization. "Blake," Rebecca stammered, "you're home early. We just wanted dinner to catch up." 8 years, I said quietly, my voice carrying the weight of controlled fury. "Our daughter has been alive for 8 years, and you both knew." The silence that followed was deafening. Todd's face had gone completely white, while Rebecca's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. "I don't know what you're talking about," she finally managed, but her voice cracked on every word. From behind the couch came a small sneeze. Rebecca's eyes darted toward the sound, and I saw recognition and terror flash across her features. That's when I knew everything Lily had told me was true. Chapter 2: The DNA Truth. The confrontation that followed was brief but brutal. Rebecca collapsed into tears, admitting to the pregnancy she'd hidden, the secret birth, and the decision to give Lily to a foster mother she'd personally selected in Portland. Todd stood silent, his face a mask of guilt and fear. She was an accident, Rebecca sobbed. We were young, and you were so focused on building your business. We thought it was better this way. Better for who? I asked, my voice deadly calm. Years of military service and building a security company had taught me to keep my emotions locked down when planning became necessary. Better for you and your boyfriend to continue your affair without the inconvenience of a child? It wasn't like that. Get out, I said simply. Both of you. Now. They left without another word, Rebecca pausing only to grab a suitcase. Todd waited by his car, and I watched from the window as they drove away together, not even trying to hide their relationship anymore. Lily emerged from behind the couch, tears streaming down her face. Are you really my daddy? I think so, sweetheart. But we're going to make sure. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Dr. Patricia Hayes, and my personal investigator, Marcus Kim, two people I'd worked with extensively in my security business and trusted implicitly. Blake, Patricia said after I'd explained the situation, this is going to get complicated fast. If the child is yours and Rebecca gave her away without your knowledge or consent, she's committed several felonies. That's not my primary concern right now, I replied, watching Lily color at my kitchen table. She'd slept in the guest room, and I'd spent the night researching Portland foster care systems and missing children reports. I want a DNA test first. I want to know everything about what they've been doing for the past 8 years. Marcus Kim arrived that afternoon with a mobile DNA testing kit. A former FBI agent turned private investigator, Marcus had helped me with several high-stakes corporate security cases. He was thorough, discreet, and utterly ruthless when hunting down information. The test will take 48 hours, he said, sealing the samples. But Blake, looking at her, he shook his head. The resemblance is unmistakable. I know. I want you to dig into Rebecca and Todd's activities. Financial records, travel patterns, communications. Everything. Consider done. But what are you planning? I looked at Lily, who was showing me a drawing she'd made of our house. I'm planning to be a father. Everything else comes after that. The DNA results arrived Tuesday morning while Lily was watching cartoons. Dr. Hayes called me into my study to deliver the news we all expected. 99.7% probability of paternity. She's yours, Blake. Completely and unquestionably. I felt a strange mixture of joy and rage. Joy at discovering I had a daughter, a brilliant, sweet, beautiful daughter who'd been stolen from me. Rage at the 8 years of her life I'd missed, the birthdays, first steps, first words, all because of Rebecca's selfishness and deception. Or my legal options. Full custody won't be difficult given the circumstances. Rebecca essentially kidnapped your child and facilitated an illegal adoption. She'll be lucky to avoid prison time. Marcus walked in with a thick file folder. You're going to want to see this. The investigation had revealed a pattern of deception that went far beyond a simple affair. Rebecca and Todd had been planning this for years. Financial records showed Todd had been paying for Lily's care through a complex series of shell companies. Rebecca had been visiting Portland monthly, not weekly, as she'd told the foster mother. But the most damning evidence was in their communications. Marcus had recovered deleted emails and text messages dating back 5 years. They were planning to wait until Lily turned 18 and then reintroduce her to you as Todd's daughter from a previous relationship, Marcus explained. They wanted to integrate her into your life slowly while maintaining their affair. They were going to tell me she was his. According to their messages, yes. They figured by 18, you'd be too attached to care about the deception, and Lily would be old enough to keep their secret. The casual cruelty of it stunned me. They'd planned to let me love a child while lying about her parentage, all to cover their betrayal. Patricia leaned forward. Blake, this gives us everything we need for criminal charges and civil suits. But I have to ask, what do you want the end game to be? I stood and walked to the window, watching Lily play in the backyard with a dog we'd adopted just that morning, a golden retriever she named Scout. She was laughing, running around without a care in the world, finally home where she belonged. I want them destroyed, I said quietly. Not just legally. I want their lives dismantled piece by piece until they understand exactly what they took from me and from her. Blake, I'm not talking about anything illegal, I clarified. I'm talking about using every legal, financial, and social tool at my disposal to ensure they pay for what they've done. They've had 8 years to enjoy their deception. Now it's my turn. Patricia and Marcus exchanged a look. They both knew me well enough to understand that when I made this kind of decision, I followed through completely. What do you need from us? Marcus asked. Everything you can find about their vulnerabilities. Employment, finances, social connections, family relationships. I want to know every person who matters to them and every source of stability in their lives. And then we remove those sources one by one, until they have nothing left except the consequences of what they've done. Chapter 3. Building the Foundation. 3 weeks later, I had custody of Lily and enough evidence to bury Rebecca and Todd in both criminal and civil court. But court proceedings would be quick. I wanted their destruction to be slow, thorough, and devastating. The first phase was establishing my new life with Lily. I'd enrolled her in an excellent private school, hired a part-time nanny named Mrs. Garcia for when I traveled, and begun the process of undoing 8 years of lies. Lily adapted remarkably well, though she sometimes asked about Mommy Rebecca and Uncle Todd. They had to go away for a while, I told her honestly. But you don't have to worry about that anymore. You're home now. Meanwhile, Marcus had compiled comprehensive profiles on both Rebecca and Todd. Rebecca worked as a marketing coordinator for a small boutique advertising firm owned by her college roommate, Jennifer Walsh. Todd had parlayed his Portland connections into a moderately successful real estate business, specializing in luxury vacation rentals. Their weaknesses were becoming clear. Rebecca's employer, Jennifer, was a devout Catholic who'd built her company on traditional family values. She regularly donated to children's charities and had no idea her employee had abandoned her own child. More importantly, Jennifer's business was struggling financially and couldn't afford to lose major clients. Todd's real estate business depended heavily on referrals from a tight-knit network of Portland's social elite. His reputation was everything in that market, and he'd positioned himself as a trustworthy family man despite never having been married. Phase 1. I explained to Marcus over dinner while Lily did homework upstairs. I want you to contact every major client of Rebecca's company and Todd's real estate business. Use shell companies if necessary. Become potential customers. What's the angle? You're going to ask very specific questions about their backgrounds, family values, trustworthiness, experience with children. Let them volunteer information about Rebecca and Todd's character. Marcus smiled grimly. And when they inevitably lie or misrepresent themselves, then we'll have documented evidence of their dishonesty in professional settings. Perfect grounds for complaints to licensing boards, professional associations, and current clients. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Neither Rebecca nor Todd knew about the investigation yet. As far as they knew, I was focused solely on establishing custody of Lily. They'd both hired lawyers for the inevitable divorce and custody proceedings, but they had no idea what was coming. My second move was more personal. Dr. Jennifer Walsh received an anonymous package containing copies of Rebecca's communications with Todd, including explicit messages sent during work hours using company equipment. The messages also detailed their plans to deceive me about Lily's parentage. Patricia had carefully sanitized the evidence to protect Lily's privacy while making the professional misconduct clear. 3 days later, Rebecca was fired. She called me that evening, her voice shrill with panic. "Blake, I lost my job." Jennifer won't even tell me why. She just said, "I violated company policy." "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied, genuinely meaning it. I didn't want Lily to suffer because her mother was unemployed. Perhaps you should think about what you might have done to damage her trust. This is about Lily, isn't it? You're trying to ruin my life because I made a mistake. You didn't make a mistake, Rebecca. You planned and executed an 8-year deception that involved kidnapping my daughter. Those aren't mistakes, they're calculated choices. The silence stretched between us. "I want to see her," Rebecca finally said. "No, she's my daughter too. You gave up that right when you gave her away without telling me. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce proceedings. Don't contact me or Lily again unless it's through legal channels." I hung up and found Lily standing in the doorway, her small face serious. Was that Mommy Rebecca? Yes, sweetheart. Is she sad? I knelt down to her level. She made some very bad choices that hurt people she was supposed to love. Sometimes when we hurt people, we end up sad because of the consequences. Lily nodded solemnly. Mrs. Patterson told me that actions have consequences. She said that's how we learn to be good people. Mrs. Patterson was very wise. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat in my study planning the next phase. Rebecca losing her job was just the beginning. She and Todd had systematically destroyed my trust, stolen 8 years of my daughter's life, and planned to deceive me for decades to come. They wanted to play games with my family? I was going to teach them exactly how dangerous that was. Marcus called the next morning with an update on Todd's business. I've made contact with 5 of his biggest clients, representing about 60% of his annual income, posing as a potential investor looking for a property management partner. And he's been very forthcoming about his traditional family values and experience with children. Mentioned several times that he believes strongly in family stability and honest communication. Perfect. Document everything. Blake, he's walking right into this. They both are. Good. They had 8 years to come clean. They chose deception every single day. Now, they get to live with the consequences of that choice. Todd's downfall would be more complex than Rebecca's, but equally devastating. His entire business model depended on trust and reputation in a small, gossipy market. Once his clients learned about his role in abandoning a child and deceiving her father, his referral network would evaporate overnight. But I wasn't just planning to destroy their careers. I was planning to dismantle their entire support system, one carefully orchestrated revelation at a time. By the time I was finished, they would understand exactly what they had taken from Lily and me, and they would pay for every single day of it. Chapter 4. The Web Titans. 6 weeks after Lily came home, Todd's real estate empire began to crumble. Marcus had done his work perfectly, establishing trust with Todd's key clients while secretly documenting every lie he told about his character and family values. The revelation came through Portland's tightly connected social media networks. Someone, whose identity would forever remain anonymous, began sharing court documents from my custody case, complete with evidence of Todd's role in concealing Lily's existence from her father. Within 48 hours, 3 of Todd's biggest clients had terminated their contracts. His luxury vacation rental business, built on referrals from Portland's elite social circles, was hemorrhaging money as property owners discovered their family-friendly property manager had helped hide a child from her father for 8 years. But Todd's professional destruction was only the beginning. The real masterpiece was what I'd planned for his personal life. Marcus had discovered that Todd had been engaged to a woman named Catherine Mills for the past 2 years. Catherine was a pediatric nurse who'd been devastated by her own infertility struggles and desperately wanted children. Todd had convinced her that he shared her family values and dream of adoption. Catherine had no idea about Todd's affair with Rebecca or his role in abandoning Lily. She found out when she received a carefully compiled package of evidence, photos of Todd and Rebecca together, communications about their affair, and most damning of all, messages where Todd complained about the burden of financially supporting a child he'd helped create but didn't want to acknowledge. Catherine ended their engagement that same day, but not before sharing the evidence with her entire social circle, including several prominent Portland families who'd been referring clients to Todd's business. The psychological pressure was precisely calculated. Todd's entire identity was built on being a successful, trustworthy family man. Watching that reputation crumble in real time was devastating him far more effectively than any physical confrontation could have. Meanwhile, Rebecca was struggling to find new employment. The Portland marketing world was small, and word had spread quickly about her family situation and sudden termination from Jennifer's company. Every interview seemed to go well until employers had conducted background checks or contacted references. I made sure that anyone who looked into Rebecca's background would find public records of the custody case, painting a clear picture of a woman who'd hidden her child from the child's father for nearly a decade. But her professional struggles were secondary to what I had planned for her family relationships. Rebecca came from a prominent Catholic family in Sacramento. Her parents, Robert and Mary Hayes, were pillars of their community. He was a retired judge. She was a longtime volunteer for children's charities. They'd always been puzzled by Rebecca's claims of infertility, especially given that she'd shown no interest in adoption or fertility treatments. They were about to learn why. I flew to Sacramento on a Friday morning, leaving Lily with Mrs. Garcia. Marcus had helped arrange a meeting with Robert Hayes under the pretense of discussing a security consulting contract for his former courthouse. Mr. Morrison, Judge Hayes said, welcoming me into his study. Marcus spoke highly of your expertise. How can I help you? Actually, Your Honor, I'm here about your daughter, Rebecca. His demeanor shifted immediately. Rebecca? What about Rebecca? I laid out the entire situation calmly and methodically, providing documentation for every claim. The secret pregnancy, the hidden child, the 8 years of deception, the affair with Todd. Most importantly, I showed him photos of Lily, his granddaughter he'd never known existed. Judge Hayes aged 10 years in 10 minutes. You're telling me that Rebecca has a child, our grandchild, and she's been lying to us about it for 8 years? Yes, sir. And she gave Lily away without my knowledge or consent, which constitutes kidnapping under both Oregon and California law. Mary Hayes had joined us, drawn by the serious tone of our conversation. When she saw the photos of Lily, she gasped audibly. She looks just like Rebecca did at that age, she whispered. Oh my God, Robert. What has our daughter done? Would you like to meet your granddaughter? I asked quietly. They flew to Portland the next day. The reunion was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. Lily was shy at first, but she quickly warmed to her grandparents, especially when Mary showed her photo albums of Rebecca as a child. The resemblance was unmistakable, and the love was immediate. We had no idea, Robert kept repeating. Rebecca told us she couldn't have children. We've been praying for grandchildren for years. She's been living in foster care, Mary said, holding Lily close. Our granddaughter in foster care, while we had empty bedrooms and broken hearts. I didn't need to say anything else. Rebecca's parents understood exactly what their daughter had stolen from all of them. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Robert Hayes called his daughter. Rebecca, your mother, and I need to see you immediately. Dad, I can't right now. I'm dealing with some legal issues. We know about the legal issues. We know about Lily. We know about everything. The silence on the phone was deafening. Get on a plane tomorrow morning. We'll discuss your future after you explain how you could hide our granddaughter from us for 8 years while we grieve for the children we thought we'd never have. Rebecca arrived in Sacramento the next day to face the full fury of parents who discovered their daughter was not the person they'd raised. By the time she left, she'd lost not only their emotional support, but their financial backing as well. Robert Hayes had been quietly helping Rebecca with rent and car payments for years. That assistance ended immediately. More importantly, the Hayes family was extensively connected throughout California's legal and social communities. Word of Rebecca's actions would spread quickly through those networks, making her job search even more difficult. But the most devastating blow was yet to come. As Rebecca flew back to Portland, broke and isolated, she had no idea that her affair with Todd was about to be exposed in the most public way possible. Marcus had been working with Catherine Mills, Todd's ex-fiancée, to compile a comprehensive timeline of Todd and Rebecca's relationship. Catherine, devastated by the betrayal and Todd's role in abandoning a child, had become an invaluable ally in ensuring the truth came to light. Together, they prepared a detailed account of the affair, complete with photos, messages, and financial records showing Todd's support of Lily while lying to his fiancée about wanting children. The story was published as a guest editorial in Portland's alternative weekly newspaper, written by Catherine, entitled, "The Man I Almost Married Helped Hide a Child from Her Father." The article went viral within hours. Portland's close-knit social community erupted in discussions about Todd and Rebecca's deception. The story was particularly damaging because it wasn't written by an angry ex-spouse or vindictive outsider. It was written by a heartbroken woman who'd been deceived by someone she trusted completely. Todd's remaining business clients abandoned him that week. Rebecca, already struggling to find work, discovered that her reputation had now spread beyond Portland to become a cautionary tale about deception and family betrayal. But I still wasn't finished with them. They'd stolen 8 years of my daughter's life, and they were going to pay for every single day of it. Chapter 5. The Trap Springs. By month 3, Todd and Rebecca's lives had imploded so completely that they were barely recognizable as the confident, successful people who'd walked into my living room that first night. But their destruction was about to enter a new phase, one they would never see coming. Marcus had discovered something interesting while digging through Todd's business records. In his desperation to maintain cash flow after losing most of his clients, Todd had begun cutting corners on property management duties. Specifically, he'd been deferring maintenance on several luxury vacation rentals while continuing to collect full management fees from the property owners. This wasn't just unprofessional, it was potentially fraudulent. He's been telling owners that repairs have been completed while keeping the money, Marcus explained. We have invoices for work that was never done, photos showing deteriorating conditions, and maintenance requests that were ignored. How bad is it? Bad enough for criminal charges if the property owners find out. And these aren't just any property owners. They're some of Portland's wealthiest families. People who don't take kindly to being defrauded. The plan was elegant. I would purchase one of the affected properties through a shell company, immediately discover the deferred maintenance, and demand a full accounting of Todd's management practices. Once the fraud was documented, I'd share that information with the other affected property owners. Todd would face not only civil lawsuits, but potential criminal charges for wire fraud and theft. Meanwhile, Rebecca had made a critical error in her increasingly desperate job search. She'd begun lying on her resume and in interviews, claiming work experience she didn't have and references she'd fabricated. Marcus had documented every false claim, every fabricated reference, every embellished credential. When Rebecca finally landed a new job with a small nonprofit organization focused on family services, she'd committed resume fraud with an organization that had zero tolerance for dishonesty, especially regarding family issues. But before I could spring either trap, something unexpected happened. Lily came home from school upset. "Daddy, some kids at school were talking about a newspaper story. They said mean things about Mommy Rebecca and Uncle Todd." My blood ran cold. I've been so focused on destroying Rebecca and Todd that I hadn't considered how the public exposure might affect Lily. She was only 8 years old, and she was still processing the massive changes in her life. What did they say, sweetheart? They said Mommy Rebecca was a bad person who lied about me, and that Uncle Todd was mean to children. Her eyes filled with tears, but they were nice to me before. They brought me presents and told me they loved me. I sat down and pulled her into my lap, feeling a moment of doubt about the path I'd chosen. Lily had been through enough trauma already. Was my quest for revenge making things worse for her? Lily, people are complicated. Sometimes people we love make bad choices that hurt other people. That doesn't mean they never loved you, but it does mean they have to face consequences for their choices. Are you mad at me because Mommy Rebecca did bad things? Oh, sweetheart, no. Never. You didn't do anything wrong. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I will never, ever be mad at you for things other people did. That night, I called Patricia to discuss modifying my approach. Blake, I understand your concern for Lily, but you can't protect her from all of this. The truth is already public, and Rebecca and Todd's actions have consequences that extend beyond your control. But she's 8 years old. She shouldn't have to deal with her classmates talking about her mother's affair. No, she shouldn't. But she also shouldn't have spent 8 years in foster care while her biological father lived an hour away, completely unaware of her existence. Rebecca and Todd created this situation, not you. She was right, but it didn't make the situation easier. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I called Rebecca. We need to talk. All three of us. You, me, and Todd. Blake, my lawyer said. I don't care what your lawyer said. I'm offering you one chance to end this before it gets worse. Much worse. There was a long pause. What do you want? I want you to understand exactly what you've done and exactly what's going to happen if you don't make this right. We met at a neutral location, a conference room in Patricia's law office. Todd looked haggard, his usual confident demeanor replaced by barely contained panic. Rebecca appeared to have lost 20 pounds and aged 5 years. Let me be very clear about where we stand. I began, laying out files on the table. Todd, your business is finished. You've lost 60% of your clients, your reputation is destroyed, and your ex-fiancé has made sure everyone in Portland knows exactly what kind of man you are. But that's just the beginning. I opened the first file. These are documents showing your fraudulent management practices, deferred maintenance, fake invoices, stolen deposits. I have enough evidence to have you charged with wire fraud and theft. The statute of limitations runs for 5 years, which means you'll be looking at federal prison time. Todd's face went white. Rebecca, your situation is similarly precarious. Resume fraud, lying to employers, and of course, the kidnapping charges that are still pending. But beyond the legal issues, you've lost your family's support, your career prospects, and your reputation. I leaned forward. But here's what you don't know yet. I've been methodically documenting every aspect of your deception for the past 3 months. I know about every lie you've told, every person you've deceived, every corner you've cut to maintain your charade. What do you want? Todd asked, his voice barely a whisper. I want justice for what you stole from me and from Lily. But more importantly, I want to make sure this never happens again. I opened the second file. These are non-disclosure agreements, public apologies, and restitution arrangements. You're going to publicly acknowledge what you did, apologize for it, and make financial restitution for Lily's care and my legal expenses. And if we refuse, Rebecca asked, then I will use every legal, financial, and social tool at my disposal to ensure you never recover from this. Your fraud charges will proceed, your families will know every detail of your deception, and your names will become synonymous with betrayal and child abandonment in every community you try to join. I stood up. You have 48 hours to decide. Sign the agreements and accept responsibility, or face the full consequences of your choices. Blake, Rebecca said quietly, I know you hate me, but please don't let that hatred hurt Lily. I don't hate you, Rebecca. I pity you. You had everything, a loving husband, a beautiful daughter, a good life. And you threw it all away for an affair with a man who cared so little about children that he helped you abandon your own. I looked at Todd. And you had a woman who loved you and wanted to build a family with you. Instead, you chose to deceive her while financially supporting a child you refused to acknowledge. Lily is better off without either of you in her life. But she deserves to know that you took responsibility for what you did, rather than continuing to lie and make excuses. The meeting ended with no resolution, but I could see in their faces that they understood the gravity of their situation. They were trapped, and they knew it. The question was whether they would accept responsibility or force me to complete their destruction. Either way, justice would be served. Chapter 6. The Choice and Its Consequences. Rebecca and Todd's decision came exactly 47 hours and 23 minutes after our meeting. They signed the agreements. The public apologies were published in both Portland and Sacramento newspapers, with Rebecca acknowledging that she had made inexcusable choices that hurt my daughter, my husband, and both our families, while Todd admitted to participating in a deception that deprived a father of his daughter and a child of her rightful home. The financial restitution was substantial. 8 years of child support plus interest, my legal expenses, and a college fund for Lily that would ensure her education was secured regardless of their future circumstances. But the most important element was the custody agreement. Rebecca would have supervised visitation with Lily once a month, contingent on her completion of family counseling and a psychological evaluation. Todd would have no contact with Lily whatsoever, a condition he accepted without argument. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 3 months later, as Lily and I were settling into our new normal, Marcus called with disturbing news. Blake, we have a problem. Rebecca and Todd haven't been honoring the spirit of their agreements. What do you mean? Rebecca has been telling people that she was forced to sign under duress, that you threatened to destroy her life if she didn't comply. She's positioning herself as a victim of your vindictive campaign rather than taking genuine responsibility for her actions. My jaw tightened. And Todd, similar story. He's been telling potential clients that his business failed due to a vindictive ex-partner spreading lies, not because of his own fraudulent practices. He's even suggested that you fabricated evidence against him. I felt the familiar cold anger settling in my chest. They've been given a chance to accept responsibility and move forward with dignity. Instead, they'd chosen to continue lying, this time portraying themselves as victims of my supposed cruelty. There's more, Marcus continued. Rebecca has been using her supervised visits with Lily to subtly undermine your relationship with her. Nothing overtly manipulative, but asking questions about whether you're angry all the time, whether you miss the old days when it was just the three of us, that sort of thing. That was the last straw. I've been willing to allow them to maintain some dignity in defeat, but if they were going to use Lily as a weapon in their campaign to avoid accountability, then the gloves were coming off completely. Marcus, I want you to document every conversation, every lie, every attempt to manipulate the narrative. If they want to play victim, they're going to learn what actual victimization looks like. What are you planning? Total destruction. No mercy. No dignity. No way back. The next phase was more brutal than anything I'd done before. Instead of subtle manipulation of their professional and social networks, I went for direct, overwhelming force. First, I had Marcus compile every lie they'd told since signing the agreements. Every instance where they'd portrayed themselves as victims rather than accepting responsibility. Then I created a comprehensive website documenting their entire deception, complete with court records, communications, and photographic evidence. The website wasn't vindictive or emotional. It was clinical, factual, and devastating. Anyone who searched Rebecca or Todd's names would find a complete accounting of their actions, their lies, and their attempts to avoid accountability. But that was just the foundation. I then hired a reputation management firm, not to clean up their online presence, but to ensure that their deception became the first thing anyone learned about them. Every social media platform, every professional network, every community forum they tried to join would quickly become aware of who they really were. For Todd, this meant the complete end of any possibility of rebuilding his real estate career. For Rebecca, it meant that her attempts to find work in marketing or communications would be impossible. No company could afford to hire someone whose own reputation management was such a public disaster. But the psychological warfare was just beginning. I used my connections in the security industry to ensure that both Rebecca and Todd were subjected to intensive background checks whenever they applied for jobs, apartments, or even dating profiles. Nothing illegal, but thorough enough that their past would be impossible to escape. Every potential employer, landlord, or romantic partner would learn about their history before making any commitments. The effect was exactly what I'd intended. Rebecca moved back to Sacramento to live with her parents, but even there, the story had spread through their social networks. Todd left Portland entirely, but my reach extended far beyond a single city. Within 6 months, they'd both become unemployable, unmarriageable, and socially isolated. But I still wasn't finished. The final phase was about ensuring that their destruction was permanent and that Lily would never have to deal with their manipulation again. I petitioned the court to terminate Rebecca's parental rights entirely, citing her continued attempts to manipulate Lily during supervised visits and her public statements undermining the custody arrangement. The petition was supported by detailed documentation of her behavior and statements provided by Marcus's investigation. Todd, having no legal relationship to Lily, was easier to handle. I simply ensured that any attempt he made to contact us or interfere in our lives would result in immediate legal action for harassment and stalking. The court hearing for terminating Rebecca's parental rights was brutal but necessary. Patricia presented evidence of Rebecca's ongoing manipulation, her refusal to accept genuine responsibility for her actions, and her attempts to undermine Lily's relationship with me. Your Honor, Patricia argued, this is a woman who hid her child for 8 years, gave her away without the father's knowledge, and has spent the past year trying to manipulate that same child against her father. She has shown no genuine remorse, no real acceptance of responsibility, and no ability to put her daughter's well-being above her own desires for sympathy and control. Rebecca's lawyer tried to argue that I had been vindictive and cruel in my response to her deception, but the evidence was overwhelming. Every action I'd taken had been legal, and every consequence she'd suffered had been a direct result of her own choices. The judge's ruling was swift and final. Rebecca's parental rights were terminated, and she was ordered to have no contact with Lily until Lily reached the age of majority and could make her own decisions about their relationship. As Rebecca left the courthouse in tears, I felt no satisfaction, no sense of victory. Just a grim certainty that justice had been served and that Lily was finally safe from further manipulation. That evening, I sat with Lily in our living room, helping her with homework while Scout slept at her feet. She was thriving in her new school, had made several close friends, and showed no signs of trauma from the custody proceedings. "Daddy," she said suddenly, "I heard you talking to Mrs. Garcia about the court today. Does this mean Mommy Rebecca won't visit anymore?" I chose my words carefully. "Lily, sometimes adults make choices that hurt other people, and there have to be consequences for those choices. Mommy Rebecca made some decisions that weren't good for you or for our family, so the judge decided it would be better if she didn't visit for a while. Will I see her when I grow up? When you're an adult, you can decide for yourself who you want to have in your life. But for now, it's my job to protect you and make sure you're safe and happy." She nodded seriously, then returned to her homework. No tears, no trauma, just the matter-of-fact acceptance that children have when adults handle difficult situations appropriately. Rebecca and Todd had gambled with my family and lost everything. The consequences of their choices would follow them for the rest of their lives, exactly as they deserved. But Lily and I had everything we needed: each other, a stable home, and a future free from their deception and manipulation. Justice wasn't just served, it was complete. Chapter 7. The New Foundation. 6 months after the court's final ruling, Lily and I had built a life that neither Rebecca nor Todd could have ever imagined. Our home was filled with laughter, love, and the kind of genuine happiness that comes from honesty and trust. Lily was flourishing at school, particularly in science and mathematics, subjects that reminded me daily of how much of her intellectual development I'd missed during those stolen 8 years. She joined the school's robotics club and had made best friends with 2 girls, Emma and Sophie, whose families had welcomed us into their social circle without question or judgment. My business had grown significantly, partly because word had spread through Portland's professional community about how I'd handled the situation with Rebecca and Todd. Several executives had approached me for security consulting specifically because they admired the methodical, thorough way I'd protected my family and held bad actors accountable. But our peaceful new life was about to be tested in a way I never anticipated. It started with a phone call from Marcus on a Tuesday morning in November. "Blake, we have a situation. Rebecca's parents want to meet with you." I paused, watching Lily through the kitchen window as she played with Scout in the backyard. "What do they want?" "They want to discuss visitation with Lily. They're claiming that while they understand and support the termination of Rebecca's parental rights, they believe they should have grandparent visitation rights independent of their daughter's actions." "Absolutely not. Blake, hear me out. They have a point legally. They had no knowledge of Lily's existence due to Rebecca's deception, and they've been nothing but supportive of you throughout this process. They testified against their own daughter to support your custody case. I considered this. Robert and Mary Hayes had indeed been valuable allies in exposing Rebecca's deception. They provided crucial testimony about Rebecca's lies regarding her supposed infertility, and their shock and anger at discovering their hidden granddaughter had been genuine. But I learned not to trust anyone when it came to protecting Lily. "Set up a meeting," I said finally. "But make it clear that any relationship with Lily goes through me, on my terms with my oversight." The meeting took place at Patricia's office the following week. Robert and Mary Hayes looked older than when I'd first met them, worn down by the shame of their daughter's actions and the loss of both Rebecca and their newfound granddaughter. "Mr. Morrison," Robert began formally, "we want to acknowledge once again that our daughter's actions were inexcusable. Mary and I have spent months trying to understand how we raised a child capable of such deception. We're not here to defend Rebecca or to ask you to forgive her," Mary added. "We know that's impossible, and we don't expect it. But we're here to ask if there's any way we might have a relationship with Lily that's separate from our daughter's crimes." I studied them carefully. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Supervised visits, initially," Robert said. "Perhaps once a month, here in Portland, with you present the entire time. We understand that trust must be earned, and we're willing to work within whatever boundaries you set. We know we failed as parents with Rebecca," Mary continued, tears in her eyes. "We don't want to compound that failure by losing our granddaughter entirely. She's the only family we have left that we can be proud of." Their pain was genuine, but I'd learned to look beyond emotion to practical realities. "If I were to consider this," I said carefully, "there would be conditions. Non-negotiable conditions." "Name them," Robert said immediately. "First, you would have no contact with Rebecca regarding Lily. Ever. If I discover that you're sharing information about Lily with Rebecca or facilitating any form of indirect contact, all visitation ends permanently." They nodded. "Second, any relationship you have with Lily acknowledges that I am her only parent. You're not trying to replace anyone or fill any void. You're simply grandparents who want to know their granddaughter." "Of course," Mary said. "Third, if Lily ever expresses discomfort with these visits or asks for them to stop, they stop. Her emotional well-being comes before anyone else's desires, including mine. We wouldn't want it any other way," Robert assured me. "And finally," I said, my voice becoming harder, "if you ever attempt to manipulate Lily, undermine my authority, or use your relationship with her to advance any agenda other than loving her unconditionally, I will destroy you as thoroughly as I destroyed your daughter. Are we clear?" The threat hung in the air like a physical presence. They'd seen what I was capable of when someone threatened my family. "Crystal clear," Robert said quietly. I agreed to a trial period of supervised visits, starting with 2 hours once a month at my house. Patricia drew up an agreement outlining all the conditions, and both Robert and Mary signed without hesitation. The first visit was awkward, but successful. Lily was initially shy with her grandparents, but Mary's gentle manner and Robert's patient interest in her robotics projects gradually drew her out. They brought photo albums of Rebecca's childhood, carefully edited to focus on family history rather than their daughter specifically. By the third visit, Lily was excited to see them, and I began to relax my supervision slightly, allowing them to talk privately while I remained in the same room. It was during the fourth visit that the real test came. Lily was showing Mary a school project when she suddenly asked, "Grandma Mary, do you think Mommy Rebecca misses me?" Mary's eyes filled with tears, and she looked at me uncertainly. This was exactly the kind of emotional manipulation I'd been watching for, but Mary's response surprised me. "Oh, sweetheart," Mary said gently, "I'm sure she does miss you. But sometimes grown-ups make such serious mistakes that they have to live with the consequences, even when those consequences make them very sad. But you still love her even though she made mistakes?" "Yes, I still love her. She's my daughter, and I always will love her. But love doesn't mean accepting bad behavior or pretending that serious mistakes don't have serious consequences." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "Daddy says that loving someone means protecting them from people who might hurt them, even if those people love them too." "Your daddy is very wise," Mary said, looking at me with something approaching respect. That evening, after Robert and Mary had left, Lily and I talked about the conversation. "Daddy, is it okay that I wondered about Mommy Rebecca?" "Of course it's okay, sweetheart. It's natural to wonder about people who were important to you, even when they're not in your life anymore. But I don't want to see her again." "Is that bad?" I knelt down to her level. "Lily, you get to decide how you feel about people. You don't have to love someone just because they're related to you, and you don't have to forgive someone just because they say they're sorry. Your feelings are yours, and they're valid whatever they are. I like Grandma Mary and Grandpa Robert. They're nice, and they don't make me feel confused like Mommy Rebecca did." That was the moment I knew the Hayes family visits could continue. Lily was making clear distinctions between the people who made her feel safe and those who didn't, and her grandparents had passed that test. Over the following months, Robert and Mary became genuine fixtures in our lives. They attended Lily's robotics competitions, sent thoughtful birthday gifts, and provided the kind of unconditional grandparent love that enriched her life without complicating it. More importantly, they never once mentioned Rebecca or tried to advocate for their daughter's return to our lives. They understood that their relationship with Lily was a privilege, not a right, and they treated it accordingly. By the 1-year anniversary of our first meeting, I'd relaxed the supervision enough to allow them to take Lily to lunch or the park, though always with clear boundaries and return times. The contrast with Rebecca's behavior was stark. Where Rebecca had constantly tried to manipulate situations to her advantage, Robert and Mary consistently put Lily's needs first. Where Rebecca had lied and deceived, they were transparently honest about everything, including their daughter's failures. They'd proven that blood relationships didn't automatically create trustworthiness, but that trustworthiness, once earned, could create lasting family bonds. As I watched Lily and her grandparents work together on a science project in our living room, I realized that sometimes the destruction of toxic relationships makes room for healthy ones to flourish. Rebecca and Todd were gone from our lives permanently, but the space they'd left behind had been filled with people who genuinely cared about Lily's well-being more than their own desires. That was a victory worth celebrating. Chapter 8. The Unexpected Return. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm by the time Lily turned 10. She was thriving academically, had strong friendships, and her relationship with her grandparents had become one of the bright spots in all our lives. I'd begun dating a pediatrician named Dr. Sarah Montgomery, whom Lily adored, and my business had expanded to 3 offices across the Pacific Northwest. For 2 years, Rebecca and Todd had been nothing more than cautionary tales, their names occasionally mentioned in conversations about the importance of honest communication in relationships. I'd assumed they were somewhere far away, dealing with the permanent consequences of their choices. I was wrong. The first sign of trouble came on a Thursday morning when Lily's school called to report that a woman claiming to be her mother had attempted to check her out of class. The woman had identification showing her name as Rebecca Morrison, Principal Davis explained. When we told her that only you were authorized for pickup, she became agitated and claimed there had been a mistake in our records. Did she leave peacefully? Eventually, but not before demanding to know who had changed the authorization forms and threatening to contact the school board about the error. My blood ran cold. Rebecca had legally reverted to her maiden name after our divorce, and she had no legal right to use my surname. More importantly, she was violating the court order by attempting to contact Lily. Did you call the police? We thought we should contact you first. Should we file a report? Absolutely. And please send me any security footage of the incident. I called Patricia immediately. Rebecca's back, and she's violating the restraining order. I'll file for an emergency hearing. In the meantime, increase security at Lily's school and consider having Marcus provide personal protection until we know what Rebecca's planning. That afternoon, Marcus arrived with disturbing news. Blake, it's not just Rebecca. Todd's back too, and they're not alone. What do you mean? They've hired a lawyer named Anthony Morrison. No relation to you. Just an unfortunate coincidence. He specializes in what he calls father's rights cases, but his real specialty is challenging custody arrangements through public pressure and media manipulation. My stomach dropped. They're going public. It gets worse. Morrison has connections with several men's rights organizations and anti-family court activists. They're positioning Rebecca as a mother who was systematically destroyed by a vindictive ex-husband, and Todd as the victim of your campaign of harassment. But the court records are being selectively interpreted. They're focusing on the private investigation, the reputation destruction, the systematic targeting of their professional relationships. They're claiming you used your wealth and connections to manufacture evidence and manipulate the legal system. I felt the familiar cold anger settling in, but this time it was different. This wasn't just about me. They were threatening Lily's stability and security. What's their endgame? From what I can gather, they want the court to reconsider the custody arrangement. Morrison is arguing that Rebecca was coerced into giving up her parental rights and that the original proceedings were tainted by your extra-legal intimidation tactics. And they think this strategy will work. In today's media environment, maybe. The story of a grieving mother fighting to reconnect with her daughter plays better than the story of a woman who abandoned her child for 8 years. That evening, after Lily was asleep, I sat in my study planning my response. Rebecca and Todd had made their biggest mistake yet. They'd assumed that my previous restraint meant I was unwilling to completely destroy them. They were about to learn otherwise. The first step was immediate and overwhelming legal action. Patricia filed for contempt of court, violation of restraining orders, and harassment charges. We requested an emergency hearing and demanded that Rebecca and Todd be held in jail until trial. But legal action would be slow, and they were already mobilizing their public relations campaign. The second step was information warfare. I had Marcus compile every piece of evidence from our previous investigations, every lie, every deception, every attempt to manipulate the narrative. Then I created a comprehensive counter-narrative that positioned their return not as a fight for parental rights, but as a continuation of their pattern of manipulation and deception. The website I created documenting their original deception was updated with their latest actions, including security footage of Rebecca attempting to remove Lily from school and copies of court orders they were violating. But the third step was the most important. I was going to use their own strategy against them. If they wanted to fight in the court of public opinion, I would give them a fight they'd never forget. I reached out to investigative journalists who specialized in family court stories, providing them with complete access to all court records and evidence. Not just the favorable parts, everything. The entire timeline of Rebecca's deception, the evidence of abandonment, the attempts at manipulation during supervised visits, and now their violation of court orders. The story that emerged was devastating for Rebecca and Todd's narrative. Local mothers fight for custody reveals years of deception. Read the headline in Portland's largest newspaper. The article methodically dismantled every claim made by Morrison and his clients, using court records and documented evidence to show that Rebecca hadn't been destroyed by a vindictive ex-husband. She'd been held accountable for abandoning her child. The article included interviews with Jennifer Walsh, Rebecca's former employer, who detailed the company policies Rebecca had violated by conducting an affair using work resources. It included interviews with Catherine Mills, Todd's ex-fiancée, who explained how Todd had lied to her about his family values while secretly supporting a child he refused to acknowledge. Most damaging of all, it included the psychological evaluation that had been conducted during the original custody proceedings, which showed that Rebecca displayed narcissistic tendencies and an inability to accept responsibility for her actions. The public backlash was swift and merciless. The men's rights organizations that had initially supported Rebecca's case quietly distanced themselves when the full facts became public. Morrison found himself facing ethics complaints for misrepresenting facts to the media. But Rebecca and Todd weren't finished fighting. 3 days later, they attempted to kidnap Lily. The attempt was clumsy and desperate. They waited outside her school and approached her as she walked to the pickup area where Mrs. Garcia was waiting. "Lily, sweetie, it's Mommy Rebecca," Rebecca said, trying to keep her voice calm. "There's been a mistake, and I need to take you home." Lily, now 10 years old and much more confident than the frightened 8-year-old who'd appeared at my door, looked at Rebecca with clear recognition but no warmth. "You're not supposed to talk to me," Lily said firmly. "My daddy said you weren't allowed." "Honey, the judge changed his mind. Everything's been fixed now." That's when Todd stepped forward. "Lily, we need to go now. Your father is in trouble, and we need to keep you safe." It was exactly the wrong thing to say. Lily had been taught about stranger danger and manipulation tactics. She immediately ran toward Mrs. Garcia while screaming for help. The school's security system captured everything on video. Rebecca and Todd were arrested within hours and charged with attempted kidnapping, violation of restraining orders, and child endangerment. Morrison tried to spin the incident as a misunderstanding, but the video evidence was overwhelming. At the emergency custody hearing the next day, Judge Williams didn't hide her disgust. "In 30 years on the bench," she said, "I have rarely seen such a blatant disregard for court orders and child welfare." The defendants not only violated multiple restraining orders, but attempted to kidnap a child through deception and manipulation. Rebecca's new lawyer tried to argue that she was simply a mother trying to reconnect with her daughter, but Judge Williams cut him off. "Counselor, your client lost her parental rights through a legal process that included extensive evidence of her abandonment and deception. Her response to that legal ruling was not to accept responsibility and work toward rehabilitation. It was to violate court orders and attempt to kidnap the child." She turned to Rebecca and Todd. "You will both be held without bail pending trial. If convicted, you will face significant prison time. More importantly, you have demonstrated that you pose a clear and present danger to this child's safety and well-being." As they were led away in handcuffs, Rebecca turned to me with pure hatred in her eyes. "This isn't over," she hissed. "Yes," I replied quietly, "it is." But I was wrong again. The final confrontation was still to come. Chapter 9. The Final Reckoning. 6 months later, Rebecca and Todd were convicted on all charges and sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for attempted kidnapping across state lines. Morrison lost his law license and faced criminal charges for conspiracy and witness tampering. Their public supporters had vanished completely, leaving them isolated and defeated. But their imprisonment didn't end the story. It provided the final chapter. During their incarceration, both Rebecca and Todd began reaching out to other inmates, family members, and even prison staff, trying to build sympathy for their case and gather support for appeals. They painted themselves as victims of my wealth and influence, claiming they'd been railroaded by a corrupt system. Marcus, who had maintained surveillance on their communications as part of the ongoing legal proceedings, brought me disturbing news about their prison activities. "They're not done, Blake. Rebecca has been writing letters to Lily, dozens of them. The prison has been holding them per the restraining order, but she's been telling other inmates that you're intercepting her correspondence with her daughter. And Todd, he's been trying to contact investigative journalists, claiming he has evidence that you manufactured the case against them. He's also been reaching out to prisoners' rights organizations, trying to position himself as a victim of prosecutorial misconduct. Even from prison, they were continuing their campaign of manipulation and deception. But their biggest mistake was yet to come. Rebecca began corresponding with a true crime podcaster named Elena Rodriguez, who specialized in stories about wrongful convictions and family court corruption. Rebecca fed Elena a carefully crafted narrative about being separated from her daughter by a vindictive ex-husband who used his wealth and connections to manipulate the legal system. Elena, initially sympathetic to Rebecca's story, began investigating the case for a potential episode. She reached out to me for comment. "Mr. Morrison, I'm working on a story about your ex-wife's case. She claims that you used private investigators and media manipulation to destroy her reputation and steal her daughter. Would you like to respond to these allegations?" "Ms. Rodriguez, I'd be happy to provide you with complete access to all court records, evidence, and documentation from this case. I think you'll find that the facts tell a very different story than the one Rebecca has shared with you." Elena's investigation took 3 months. When she was finished, she had a story, but not the one Rebecca had expected. The podcast episode, titled "The Mother Who Gave Away Her Child," was a devastating expose of Rebecca and Todd's deception. Elena had interviewed everyone involved in the case: Jennifer Walsh, Catherine Mills, Robert and Mary Hayes, Dr. Hayes, Patricia, Marcus, and even Mrs. Patterson's neighbors, who remembered Rebecca's infrequent visits to see Lily. The episode methodically dismantled every lie Rebecca had told, using court records, audio recordings, and documented evidence to show that she hadn't been a victim of my vindictiveness. She'd been held accountable for abandoning her child and then lying about it for years. But the most powerful moment came when Elena interviewed Lily, now 11 years old and articulate enough to speak for herself. "Did you want to live with your biological mother?" Elena asked gently. "No," Lily said simply. "She made me feel confused and scared. She would ask me questions about my daddy and try to make me think he was mean. But my daddy has never been mean to me. He protects me and takes care of me and makes me feel safe." "Do you remember living with Mrs. Patterson?" "A little bit. She was nice, but she told me that my real parents couldn't take care of me right then. I always wondered why. Now I know it's because my real daddy didn't know I existed. How do you feel about your life now? I love my life. I have my daddy and Scout and Grandma Mary and Grandpa Robert and Dr. Sarah. I have friends and school and robotics club. I'm happy. Do you miss your biological mother? There was a long pause. I feel sad that she made bad choices, but I don't miss being confused and scared all the time. The podcast episode went viral, eventually reaching over 2 million downloads. Rebecca and Todd's narrative was completely destroyed, and their appeals were denied by every court that reviewed them. But the real conclusion came 2 years later, when Lily turned 13. I found her in her room one evening, reading a letter. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Daddy, this is from Mommy Rebecca. She wrote it before she went to prison, but the court just gave it to me now that I'm older." I sat down beside her. "Do you want to talk about it?" She says she's sorry and that she loves me and that she hopes someday I'll understand why she made the choices she did. What does that make you feel? Lily was quiet for a long time. I think she does love me in her own way, but I also think she doesn't understand what love really means. What do you think love means? Love means putting the other person first, even when it's hard. Love means telling the truth, even when it hurts. Love means protecting someone, not using them. She looked at me with those green eyes that matched my own. "You love me the right way, Daddy. You've always put me first, even when it was hard. You told me the truth about everything, even the bad parts. And you protected me from people who wanted to hurt me, even when those people were related to you. Especially then. Family isn't just about blood, Daddy. Family is about who takes care of you and makes you feel safe and helps you become the best person you can be." She folded the letter and put it in her desk drawer. I might write her back someday when I'm grown up, but not to have a relationship with her. Just to let her know that I'm okay and that I'm happy. And if you decide you never want to write back, that's okay too. I know. You taught me that I get to choose who I let into my life. That night, as I tucked her into bed, Lily asked me one final question. "Daddy, do you think Mommy Rebecca and Uncle Todd learned anything from what happened?" I considered my answer carefully. I think they learned that actions have consequences. Whether they learned anything about responsibility or putting others first, I don't know. But that's not our concern anymore. Because we're safe now. Because you're safe now. And you'll always be safe, as long as I'm here to protect you. She smiled and closed her eyes. "I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Lily. More than anything in the world." As I turned off her light and walked downstairs, I reflected on the 3 years since that rainy night when a little girl had appeared at my door, calling me Daddy. Rebecca and Todd had stolen 8 years of Lily's childhood and nearly destroyed both our lives with their deception and manipulation. But in the end, their cruelty had led to something beautiful. Lily and I had built a relationship based on honesty, trust, and unconditional love. She had grandparents who adored her, a potential stepmother who cared for her deeply, and a future full of possibilities. Rebecca and Todd had lost everything: their freedom, their reputations, their relationships, their futures. But more importantly, they'd lost any claim to the family they'd tried to manipulate and control. The justice wasn't just in their punishment. It was in Lily's happiness, security, and confidence. It was in the life we'd built together, free from their lies and manipulation. They'd gambled with my family and lost everything. I protected my daughter and gained everything that mattered. In the end, that was all the revenge I needed. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.